Welcome to the Switchblade Sisters Social Club, a true crime podcast where two sisters exploit their worst fears for your entertainment. You're welcome. I'm Dee.
And I'm Randa, and together we are the SUCH Sisters. For more information, check out our website at www.switchbladesistersocialclub.com or find us on Instagram and Facebook at Switchblade Sisters Social Club.
Thanks for listening. Hi! Welcome. This is the Switchblade Sisters Social Club, where two sisters exploit their worst fears for your entertainment. You're welcome. My name's Dee, and I'm joined by my spectacular sister.
Hi, I'm Randa.
Literally the best sister in the whole universe.
Oh, thank you. What did I do?
I don't know. I just couldn't imagine a better sister for me.
Oh, thank you so much.
You're welcome. I love you.
Love you.
So, we are well and truly into season 2 now. It's just so much fun. It's so exciting.
I know. It's about time we got our faces done again. We haven't done it since
we were just talking about that.
Haven't done it since the beginning of season 1. It's time.
It's time. Well, on that note, I want to tell you and everyone that's listening about my boob consultation that I had today.
Okay, tell me.
So, I am 40 and I've had my whole life, my weight fluctuate a lot. And, I've got like what we endearingly call spaniel's ears, pound coins in socks.
Yep, I'm familiar.
Yeah. So I wanted to treat myself to a little lift. So I had my appointment today and you were asking me about it and I was like, I'll tell you later. I'll tell you later on the podcast. Because, it was interesting. And let's be honest, it's something that we know a lot of our listeners think about, a little bit of a nip and a tuck, right? So I have to be careful because you know how I can't sit still for 5 seconds, but I'm also recording in my pants because it's so hot today.
Yeah.
So apologies if the Patreon viewers get a bit of a flash. I want to speak to you about our demographic on our Patreon and stuff versus our listeners. It's hilarious. But first, let me talk about my boobs. So, so I had a little appointment. I'm not keen on implants. No judgment there, obviously, but because I know that you probably have to replace them after a certain amount of years. So it's like basically signing up for a commitment of having to have another big surgery later on down the line. So I'm not super keen on that. And also, like longer recovery time, all kinds of stuff, right? And the potential for complications, because you hear horror stories, don't you?
About freaks me out, yeah.
Post-surgery complications, leaking, reactions to silicone, all kinds of stuff, right? I'll tell you who's a really big advocate for raising awareness about that, and it's a random one. Hannah from S Club 7.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I think she made a documentary on it because she herself had boob implants and then because sometimes the side effects are really difficult to diagnose. And so a lot of people that suffer from these, complications, it takes ages for them to realize that their symptoms are associated with their boob implants. So I think she was one that had that problem and things like chronic fatigue and pain.
And do you remember the PIP scandal?
Oh my God.
Was that what it was called?
I don't remember what it was called. No, because I think the PIP scandal was something else. But yeah, there's all kinds of, right? Yeah. All kinds of fucking awful things that can happen.
Yeah, wasn't that where people were fitted with non-medical grade silicone or something? Awful.
Like the horror stories you hear, even when you go to like a reputable, surgeon and stuff like that. So I just wanted to avoid that, it wasn't for me about making them necessarily bigger. It's just having them not touching my ankles when I stand up,
I'm going to be so jealous of your little bee sting boobs.
I know, they're going to be like mosquito bites because he told me, he did say with a lift, they will be a C, but probably a B cup. And I'm okay with this, but it was a bit of a shock because, at my biggest, I've been a G cup. Do you know what I mean? So like a B, it's a big fucking It's just a change,
they're
right?
gonna be so perky. I'm gonna be so jealous. You better sign me up too. Just sign me up right now.
But it was just,
speaking of boobs. So the kids have been back at school for 3 days now, and after the summer holidays, and Che, that kid throws me under the bus all the time. So not only did he go back and tell his teachers that I can't ride a bike, but he also told them that when I walk, my boobs wobble. And
I mean,
I haven't taught him the word boob, so he says chest. But it's like, what else is this kid gonna go and say?
well, they do say you shouldn't have kids to boost your confidence. And Che is a prime example of that.
Yeah, savage with his honesty.
Brutal honesty, which we appreciate, but also, yeah, he's not learned the diplomacy side of things quite yet.
Don't know where he'd learn it from, though, to be fair.
Yeah. Do you want to know some funny demographics about our Patreon?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I'm very curious about that. Yeah, because we have more than 90% female listeners, unless you're going to tell me otherwise. Okay.
No, we do. Our listenership is such. Our Patreon, mainly men.
Interesting.
Hi, boys.
Hey.
Hey there. Well, I won't name and shame, but I think they're very, very fond of seeing our faces.
Oh, we will continue to make an effort. It's the only day I do.
Yes, but also I think watching me get wasted on my own.
Yeah. I think that's a firm favorite. Dee knows how to deliver.
Yeah. So yeah, that is our Drunk Real Housewives spinoff. Check out our Patreon. If you want a little taster, we've got a few teasers and whatnot on our social media, which my sister beautifully curates. Beautifully curates.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I also wanted to tell you a funny story that I thought you'd appreciate.
Yes.
All right. So I've had a few wardrobe malfunctions this week.
Is today one? Because you look like Cyndi Lauper.
I wouldn't call that a misfunction. That's a fucking life goal. Do I?
You're having a moment.
Thanks. Is it an 80s moment? It's because it's so fucking hot. So I'm wearing clothes I wouldn't normally wear. I've got my hair up because it's just fucking it's just a clammy mess. Anyway, so yeah, so basically you remember our aunt and uncle were over from Belgium.
Mm-hmm.
And something happened.
Uh-oh.
So I drove them down to Fishbourne Roman ruins near Chichester because they love a good Roman ruin. So I drove them down. We had a little field trip. And then as I was getting out of the car, I was wearing a strappy dress.
Uh-oh.
And again, it was probably a dress from when my boobs were a bit bigger and holding the dress in place. So it was a strappy, loose-fitting, flowing dress. And as I got out of the car, the straps, both of them, fell off my shoulders. And so as I stepped out of the car, the dress fell off entirely. And I'm standing in the car park in my bra and pants with this dress around my ankles.
Oh my God. Why does this shit only happen to us? This doesn't happen to other people. Like,
we need to know. New people's poll. Does this shit happen to other people?
Because I swear we fall over more than other people. Like, embarrassing things happen to us more than other people. I don't fucking know why.
The very next day, another really fucking hot day. So I'm wearing another strappy dress. It wasn't a loose fitting one. It managed to stay on my person. I didn't kind of flash everyone in a English heritage car park. But I went to go get a piercing put back in because I can never put fucking piercings back into my ears and whatnot, And anyways, I'd lost the jewelry. So I went to go buy some jewelry at the piercer, get it put in. I'm sitting there and I'm like, I'm wearing my fucking dress inside out.
Oh yeah, I had that yesterday. Yeah, at the school.
But this was like a heavily printed dress, like very noticeably. And the reason why I noticed on top of that is because, when it had like, when the tag on the inside's like a fucking novel? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I had one of those and I was just looking at it like, why is that there? Oh.
It's funny you say that because it literally happened to me yesterday. I was wearing my top inside out on the school run and I thought, well, I'm fucking here now. So I'm just going to roll with it because what else can you do?
What else can you do?
I'm so envious of those people who always have perfect hair, are always put together. They never fall over. They never trip over anything. They never spill anything. They never drop anything. How the fuck does that happen?
I literally, just before we came on this recording, I'm having because we're recording an evening. It's an evening recording again, so I like to have my little drinky poo. So I've got my mug of Kraken and cola, and I
You've got your mug of what?
Kraken spiced rum and cola.
Oh, okay.
Let me demonstrate.
Oh, nice.
But I spilled a bit, and I was thinking that I cannot remember the last time I had any drink without spilling part of it.
I mean, your excuse is dyspraxia. I don't know what the fuck mine is.
You might have it too, or you ever
Most
tested?
possibly. No.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
Genetic.
So we will of course be ending this episode with the People's Pulse, and we've got
I
exciting
know.
announcements.
I'm so tempted just to fast forward to the. Let's just fuck this crime shit off. Let's just go straight to the People's Pulse.
Let's rebrand People's Pulse, new podcast where we just talk about our shit and then answer questions. And
do you know what? The only thing that puts me off that is that we can't have a solid crime con next year.
Yeah, I know. And we love crime con. But we do have a little exciting announcement for the People's Poll later on. But
we have an announcement?
Yeah, we have an announcement.
What do you mean?
Oh, you know it. It's not a surprise to you. You've just forgotten. But yeah, it's fun. It's a fun one.
Okay.
It's a fun one. But just tell me the fucking story.
Just don't even want to, because we're having such a good time.
I know.
We're having such a good time. And I spent 3 days out in the sun this week, and I'm so tanned, but because I'm so tanned, my face is so white because my makeup is so white compared to the rest of my body.
You've got to have summer makeup and winter makeup.
That's my dilemma of the day. It's a good life if that's your only fucking dilemma of the day.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Just tell me the fucking story.
Okay. I'm not in the mood to tell you the story anymore because, it's a Friday night.
What is this dress? It's cute.
Oh, this dress is Primark circa 2006. Cute, huh? It's like a little sailor's dress.
My t-shirt says, sounds gay, I'm in.
Love it.
Yeah. So,
okay. Today, I feel a bit guilty because what we're going to talk about is a case or a number of cases that you actually mentioned twice that we were never going to cover because it's so fucking horrific.
Oh no, Delroy Grant.
Oh, you do know. Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah, and I felt terrible because I had researched this months ago. And I thought, oh shit, I've already done the research and
but I didn't want to ever cover it because I thought you would never want to cover it.
No, do you know what? I don't. Do I ever want to cover any of these? I just want to talk about Real Housewives.
It's like, I remember this one time where this little old lady fell over in the street in front of me, and you didn't even want me to tell you that. I know.
No.
So how is it to Delroy Grant? Okay,
I'm gonna not go.
Take as many breaks as you need.
I
am happy to have any excuse to talk about Colin Sutton.
Well, we're going to talk about him a lot. And it's because we've talked about him a lot, because we've spoken to our love, Colin. We've had him on the podcast. And, it's such an interesting one as well. The length of time this went on for. But I feel guilty talking about it because I normally don't ever cover anything that involves kids, babies, and elderly people because I love them so much. Okay, but let's just fucking get into it. Okay, come on, let's just get this over with.
Let's get this over with so we can do People's Pulse. Come on.
Okay, so Delroy Grant, the motherfucker, was born in 1957 in Kingston, Jamaica, and is notorious for carrying out a series of offenses of burglary, rape, and sexual assault on elderly victims between October 1992, and May 2009 in Southeast London. And he's currently imprisoned with a penalty of life imprisonment after being apprehended in 2009. So he was known as the Minstead Rapist and later as the Nightstalker, not to be confused with the Richard Ramirez, also known as the Nightstalker, totally different one.
And I think also Golden State Killer for a while was known as the Nightstalker. I mean, it's a very impactful name for someone fucking causing shit at night, so it's not surprising it was used.
He was active since 1990, and he had a specific modus operandi.
Wait, so sorry. started in 1990 that we know of.
Yeah.
Caught in 2009.
Yes.
So that's
a
like
long time.
20 years, basically.
Yeah, and that's what's frightening. And we're going to talk about why it took so long, how they found him in the end. And he had a specific modus operandi preying mainly on elderly women who lived alone and is suspected of over 100 offenses. So in 1998, the Met Police launched the dedicated Operation Minstead team to investigate the crimes based at Lewisham Police Station. So as of 2009, the operation was the largest and most complex rape investigation ever undertaken by the Met Police. And on 24th of March, 2011, Grant was found guilty of 22 offenses. The following day, he was given 4 life sentences and ordered to serve a minimum of 27 years in prison. And
That doesn't seem like very much. 4 life sentences, 27 years.
No, I know. I don't understand how all that works. Why do they call it a life sentence?
We need to get a fucking lawyer or someone to come and explain all that shit to us. If you're a lawyer out there that can talk to us about this kind of stuff, please. Is it like the case when we did Pedro Filho in Brazil, where they've got a law that like you can't get a sentence that's longer than your natural life? Is that it? Is it based on like what someone's life was, 200 years ago, where people lived till 40? I don't know. Like how?
I don't know, but let's get Kim Kardashian on the line because she's a lawyer now, isn't she?
Yeah.
Actually, apparently her podcast is pretty good, but.
Also, you order enough Skims that she surely owes us a fucking appearance.
And I tagged them too.
Yeah.
So Operation Minstead was dramatized over the 2020 second series of the British TV show Manhunt, based on the memoirs of guess who? Our dear friend of the show, the man, the myth, the legend, the former DCI Sir Colin Sutton.
Yeah. And if this is the first episode you've listened to, because we literally talk about him on every single episode. So if you've listened to at least one other episode of ours, you will have heard us profess our love for Colin Sutton. Yeah. But he is also the former detective who caught Levi Belfield. Check out episode 1, season 1, episode 2 for our Levi Belfield episode, where we first fully fell in love with Colin. Because he's just amazing. Like, we have a very natural, normal, like, innate distrust of police and authority in general and so forth. And yet he broke through those barriers and made us fall in love with him.
He stole our hearts.
He did. He has our hearts. So, yeah. And this is his other really big case that, he caught loads of bad guys in his career, but Levi Belfield and Delroy Grant were obviously his 2 biggest because they were the most prolific and awful.
Yeah, I'm going to talk a lot more about Colin Sutton and what we asked him when we spoke to him. But so Delroy Grant was an accomplished burglar and had broken into the homes of over 90 elderly women aged between 68 and 93. He was positively linked to 4 reported rapes and around 30 other sexual assaults. And police believed he was also responsible for at least 2 rapes where the victims felt unable to make any official allegation. So the true total may be higher, as his victims were often too traumatized to speak to police, something that is sadly very common.
I mean, if you think they're isolated, quite often elderly ladies.
Yeah, I know, it broke my heart. I'm gonna talk about that a little bit, but yeah, what some of them said absolutely broke my heart. So the Operation Minstead investigation team had decided which incidents were unmistakably the work of the same offender and which were similar but possibly unrelated. Therefore, many possible Minstead incidents flagged up by police for the attention of the operation team could not be definitely confirmed as the work of the same offender, and so had to be excluded from the linked series.
Because they don't want to muddy it when it goes to court, right?
Yeah. If
they include cases that they're like sure are by the same person, but there's no evidence, it could make it harder to convict. It confuses the case. It weakens the case against them for the ones they definitely know. So it's really awful because, like, with these serial offenders, there's usually so many fucking more cases that they know have happened that have been reported and they suspect are linked to them, but also fucking tons that probably, like
are
I said,
not reported. Yeah,
not
and
even reported.
that's the sad truth. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the confirmed series of offences began in October 1992 in the Shirley area of Croydon. However, because of a break of 4 years between his first attack and others, Operation Minstead was not set up until 1998. And what I really wonder was, because there's several breaks in his attacks, what prompts the break and the interruption of attacks?
Is it linked to like when he had kids, or supposed happy moments in his marriage, or a specific job, you know, with
But I find that so fascinating.
And was there even a break, or was it just that there was a period of unreported? Yeah.
And that's what I find fascinating, because we've come across that in several cases where there's been long breaks. And what is it that suddenly one day, what is it that pacifies that urge in them for so long, if that is the case? And also, what is it that reignites it, you know?
You know, the most awful example of this we went to listen to at CrimeCon is David Fuller on Sky.
I know, the corpses in the morgue.
Yeah.
Fucking awful. So I can't get that out of my head.
I know, me neither, because it's basically...
Oh, don't tell the story again.
Well, okay, close your ears, because
Okay,
I always feel like if we mention someone, we should give a little summary, right?
Okay, go.
So he was someone who in the 80s killed 2 women that we know of in Kent, and then was never caught, disappeared, fell off the radar, was never found. But then, many years later, I think it was 2019 or 2020, because of familial DNA, they managed to trace him and find him. And they went to go and arrest him. And that moment of joy those police officers must have had, or satisfaction, I don't know what the right word is, but that, oh my God, we might have actually caught this guy. But then when they went to look through his stuff, they found hundreds of pictures of him sexually abusing corpses in the morgue at the hospital where he worked. And he was an electrician at the morgue, at the hospital, so he had full access to everywhere in this hospital. But basically, the reason why he didn't carry on killing is because he had access to these corpses. So, I mean, that is like the fucking worst example of why a serial offender might stop offending in that specific crime, because obviously he's committing an entirely different crime there. But I think it was called Monster in the Morgue. It's on Sky TV, the documentary. It's on Now TV as well. I mean, I recommend it, but it was fucking chilling. It was one of the worst cases I've ever fucking heard about. And when we were at CrimeCon, we heard the director of that documentary speak, but we also heard like the lead detective. I'm really sorry, I can't remember any of their names, but they were phenomenal. The lead family liaison officer. And I mean, there were tears, because like that lead detective, he said, I had to look through these photos and try to identify the corpses in order to be able to then report it to the families. And it was just, grim. So yeah, sometimes there is often a reason why they might stop committing a specific crime. Yeah. But normally it's a little bit more benign than that, in that they've got a change of job, or a relationship, or kids, or, do you know what I mean? Just some change in their routine, or something that means they either can't physically, logistically do it, or that they're getting some kind of satisfaction or happiness in some other way, like maybe they start a new relationship, and for a while that is it gives them enough satisfaction. But anyways, you tell us more about this fucking piece of shit.
So, although he committed loads of crimes, Grant was dormant for long periods, and after the first attack in October 1992, no further offences were reported until 1997. And after a particularly violent rape on the 5th of August 1999, where his victim almost died from her injuries, there was another long break. And sorry, I think I fucking said that sentence. I said that sentence.
You didn't.
Okay. There was another long break. So this prompted some media speculation that the rapist had been imprisoned for an unrelated offense. Oh, I thought you were going to say something.
No, I was just sorry. I made up. Because yes, that's sometimes that's why there's a break. But
or that he had died. However, on the 13th of October 2002, 10 years after the first attack, Grant struck again, that we're aware of. So 7 confirmed attacks took place in the summer. And when I say that we're aware of, obviously, when we say there was a break, it's that we were aware of.
Yeah, because you know what we've never really talked about, and I'll do some research to talk about it next time. It's the difference between the officially reported crimes and when they do like regular polls asking people if they've been victim of a crime. You know, if someone comes and like, you know, if you do a survey, you will tell them or whatever, but at the time you might not report it for whatever reason. Either you don't think it'll be taken seriously, you're embarrassed, or you don't think it's a crime that they will put much effort into, or like loads of reasons why people don't report crimes. So yeah, so you always have to be a bit skeptical about these breaks.
Yeah,
because
so 7 confirmed attacks took place in the summer of 2003, and then another break followed. A further series of confirmed attacks took place towards the end of 2008 into mid-2009. So Detective Superintendent Simon Morgan, who led the Operation Minstead team from 2001 to 2009, explained the problems in arriving at a definitive total of offenses in the series by saying his victims come from a generation who are inclined to see the good in everyone. This fucking breaks my heart. One thanked him for being gentle when he raped her. Another said she did not want to dial 999 because I know the police are already so busy. And that fucking killed me. You know, because we're talking about elderly ladies. Yeah. You know, they're from a different generation, and, you know, a generation that probably...
already more conservative about talking about any kind of sex.
Yeah.
Let alone, like, assault.
Yeah. And it just kills me. So now we're going to talk about where the offenses took place. So the offenses occurred in defined geographical clusters in and around southeast London, and most of the offenses occurred around Shirley in Croydon and also Orpington. So the fact that many of the offenses had taken place in Orpington, including one on Boxing Day in 1998, led detectives to suspect the rapist had a link to the area. So Detective Superintendent Morgan commented, he either lives, works, or has some connection with someone he visits in Orpington. This could be a child, a school, or a job. And on 3 occasions, the rapist made remarks about having to get to Brighton. So, his modus operandi. So Grant gained entry into the homes of his victims from the side or the rear of the house, either through open windows or by removing a window pane entirely. And the scientific examination of one of the crime scenes was to prove most crucial because the intruder had attempted to force his way through a window using a screwdriver, which had left a distinctive 1 centimeter indentation mark on the frame. And this proved useful because he used the same tool during several later crimes.
Ooh, so they matched the tool marks.
Yes.
And can we just say, we've talked about this before, the terrifying nature of having people come into your home to attack you.
It gets worse. I'm going to try not to go into too much detail, but what was interesting is that he left that evidence behind, but there were no fingerprints found, which I'll talk more about. So he thought he was being clever, but he wasn't. So he'd been known to use tools stolen from the victim's own garden shed to remove the window beading. He used to rip out telephone wires either before entering the property or after gaining access. He then disabled the lights either by switching off the electricity at the meter or by unscrewing light bulbs from their sockets. He then approached his victims. Yeah, he then approached his victims, shining a torch in their eyes. Often his first words were to demand sex. However, he had been known to spend hours in victims' homes either before or without assaulting them. He exhibited a knowledge of geriatrics. I find this fascinating, knowing how to support his elderly victim's spine and how to pick them up by their elbow. Yeah,
I mean, I fucking hate that.
Yeah,
but was that a clue?
It was, because he has sometimes been shamed into leaving without committing a sexual assault when his victim had chastised him. And this fact surprised me, and I asked Colin Sutton about it in our episode with him. And of particular note is an incident where one victim caused him to apologize and leave by angrily demanding, "What would your mother think of you?" And he responded by saying the government had failed his mother. So police have speculated that Grant was ashamed of his actions, perhaps explaining the long periods that sometimes occurred between offenses. Despite this, he could also be extremely violent. And during his most violent attack on the 5th of August, 1999, he raped his victim twice and left her bleeding from a perforated bowel, injuries which were nearly fatal. He had also been known to burgle his victims, but this wasn't his primary motive. He often took money, but only small amounts, and he used to also take credit cards and PIN numbers. Interestingly, in 2004, he stole a stack of £5 notes, but they were later discovered thrown a mile away from the victim's house. He had also taken jewelry. The same year, he told a victim that his mother had died 4 years earlier, also stating that the government had let her down anyway. So, he used to strike on all days of the week, but most often during the early hours of a Friday or Saturday morning. And detectives strongly believed at the time that he rode a motorbike. Now, there was some controversy surrounding an issue of DNA, or a big issue of DNA. So the Minstead rapist, aka Grant, was thought to be forensically aware since he never left a fingerprint at any scene. However, an offense committed on the 13th of October 2002 left behind a vital clue, which was a footprint from a size 10 Nike Air Terra trainer. And most importantly, though, he did not, this is gross, he did not use condoms and his DNA was captured. The first time his DNA was discovered was at a scene in 1992. After this, more than 2,000 DNA samples were collected from suspects, and this is what caused a lot of controversy, and we spoke to Colin about that. So, Britain's police DNA database contains samples from anyone arrested for a recordable offense since 1995. Even by the time of his first offense, Grant was clearly an accomplished burglar. However, his DNA remained unmatched and identified on the database. So if the rapist had ever been arrested for a burglary or a related offense, it would have to have been before 1995, when police began routinely gathering DNA samples from inmates. Then, advanced DNA techniques pointed towards a North Afro-Caribbean ethnic origin for the rapist, probably the Windward Islands of St. Lucia, Barbados, St. Vincent. I'll say that again. St. Lucia, Barbados, St. Vincent, and the Grenadines, Tobago, or Trinidad. So
sorry, we should just state, because it's not 100% obvious, because you said he was born in Kingston in Jamaica, but there are white Jamaicans, but Delroy Grant is a black man.
Yeah. And Operation Minstead identified around 21,000 possible suspects that fitted such a profile. And in March 2004, the detectives hand-delivered a letter to hundreds of men of Caribbean origin in South London asking for their help to voluntarily provide DNA samples for elimination purposes. And this reminded me of the Colin Pitchford episode that you presented. And police, where they asked people to come in to give blood samples, right?
But in that one, because I remember it was like one of the first cases of even using DNA in that way, they weren't able to say, oh, this is probably a person of this ethnicity, blah, blah, blah. They just they asked to test every male between in a specific age range, whereas you can understand the sort of delicate nature of being specifically asking for one racial group of people. It's like you get it because you've got proof that that person is in that racial group, but at the same time, it's definitely something you have to handle delicately. Yeah. And at the same time, I can understand both reactions of being A, offended, is this possibly fucking racist? And B, being like, take my fucking blood, I want to clear myself and I want you to find the actual person. So
yeah, well, I'm going to go into it more. So the police explained that they desperately needed to reduce the vast number of suspects in the operation, and this was the best way to do it. So volunteers were assured that their DNA samples would be destroyed as soon as they were confirmed to be unmatched with a rapist's DNA. And the majority of those potential suspects were eager to help if it would assist police in catching the suspect. However, 125 men initially refused to provide samples, believing that the exercise was discriminatory and breached their human rights. Police brought pressure on those who refused, explaining that their behavior could be construed as suspicious. 5 objectors were subsequently arrested but cleared, and this incident was seen by some commentators, particularly the Voice newspaper and Liberty, as an abuse of power that damaged relations between London's Black community and the police.
Well, because we also need to say this is a marginalized community, which probably doesn't have a high level of faith and trust in the police service. So again, you could totally understand where they're like, you say you're going to destroy my DNA, but are you really? You know?
Yeah.
So I get it. I get it.
So do I. And Liberal Democrat MP Lynn Featherstone questioned police tactics in the House of Commons, and although they were able to reduce the list of potential suspects from 21,000 to 1,000, so they eliminated 20,000 people, police resigned themselves to being able only to obtain the DNA of certain suspects still left on the list if and when they were arrested for an unrelated offense. So police did investigate, but linked the number plate to a Delroy Grant living in East London, who was the wrong age.
Wait! They investigated and linked the number plate.
Can I fucking finish?
Yeah, what number plate?
Let me tell you.
Okay. Are you going to tell me? Looks like you're not sure. Because you haven't mentioned a car.
Let me see if I'm going to tell you. I don't know. I might have chopped and changed this around a little bit. Okay. So police investigated and found a link to a Delroy Grant living in East London who was the wrong age and whose DNA did not match that recovered from the crime scenes. The name Delroy Grant was marked down as having been eliminated from inquiries. And a crime report from Bromley's police burglary team included information about two different men, both with the name Delroy Grant, which led the police police checking the DNA sample of the wrong man against the offender profile. 3 days after the burglary, a member of the public told police a man had been seen putting on a balaclava and gloves before heading to a house, and gave officers the registration of the BMW car that the man drove. And then I think I should talk about
the registration plate. Okay.
Police did investigate, but linked the number plate to a Delroy Grant living in East London who was the wrong age and whose DNA did not match that recovered from the crime scenes. The name Delroy Grant was marked down as having been eliminated from inquiries. And a crime report from Bromley's police burglary team.
I need you to explain this a little bit more. So there's two Delroy Grants.
Oh, fucking hell, D. I researched this like back in April.
No, but let's try to work it out. There's two Delroy Grants. Obviously, one of them is the fucking offender.
Yeah.
Who I presume is actually the one that was putting on the balaclava and was seen with his car. And that car was his car.
Yeah.
But somewhere in the police records, they were getting confused between the two Delroy Grants. The other innocent Delroy Grant was living in East London, different age profile, etc., etc. But for some reason...
My next sentence clarifies.
Oh, good. Then fucking clarify, please, because I don't know what I'm fucking talking about.
Officers identified the car was registered to Delroy Easton Grant of SE4, postcode SE4, and his wife, Jennifer. So, a search of police databases...
Who is the bad Delroy Grant?
Who is the offender, Delroy Grant. A search of police databases identified a number of men with a similar name nationwide, including one in London, but Delroy Easton Grant was not on the database. The burglary team contacted Operation Minstead, set up to investigate the Nightstalker attacks, to tell them about a possible linked crime, including details of Delroy Easton Grant and the similarly named person in London. The similarly named person did not match the DNA samples found at the scenes of the Minstead offences, and an officer even visited Grant's address in Brockley Mews and spoke to a woman who confirmed Grant owned the BMW. But Grant was never arrested nor even spoken to. While his fingerprints were being taken in the police station, it was revealed in court that he arrogantly remarked, "I don't know why you're bothering. I always wear gloves." Yeah, he took such lengths to avoid detection during his 17-year crime spree that not one of his fingerprints was ever detected. Meanwhile, a move to collect DNA samples from more Senior officers later admitted that the voluntary DNA testing did little to further the inquiry. The arrest and the trial. According to newspaper reports, a suspect was seen by cash machine CCTV cameras using his victim's credit and debit cards, but the footage appeared to be useless as his face was always covered by a mask. And when viewing some of the footage, one police officer spotted the reflection of a bus in a shop window. Yeah, I know you love this shit.
I love this shit. This is Colin Sutton fucking shit.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the bus was tracked down and was found to be fitted with cameras. Police trawled through the CCTV footage recorded by the bus, and on the recording, a Vauxhall Zafira was spotted near the cash machine, and vehicle records pinpointed all models in the South London area. So on Sunday, 15th of November 2009, this Zafira was spotted parked in the Shirley area of Croydon, which was already being stalked out by 70 police officers following recent break-ins believed to have been carried out by Grant. He was arrested as he approached his car, having just attempted to enter a nearby pensioner's house.
So, like, post-attempted robbery.
Yeah. On 16th of November, it was reported that Delroy Grant of Brockley Mews, Brockley, Southeast London, had been arrested and charged with 22 offences and appeared at Greenwich Magistrates Court. He was remanded in custody to reappear at the court on the 19th of November. So on that date, he appeared at court, where he was then ordered to appear at Woolwich Crown Court on the 26th of November, and prosecutors said that further charges were likely. He remained in custody during that time, and on 26th of November 2009, he was next due to appear at the Old Bailey for a plea and case management hearing on the 8th of February 2010. So on the 8th of February, he was remanded and was next due to appear at Inner London Crown Court on the 30th of April 2010, where he pled not guilty. And Mr. Justice Bean. I don't know why that makes me laugh, probably because Mr. Bean.
There's so few names that don't sound a bit ridiculous after
know, yeah.
Justice.
Yeah. I shouldn't laugh at his name. Okay, so the trial would, Mr. Justice Bean, so the trial would take place on the 1st of March 2011. And it was thought that the trial would take up to 6 weeks. Sorry, all the stuff about the trial is kind of boring. Cut that out if you want.
No.
There were 22 charges in total of rape, indecent assault, and burglary. All
22 charges.
Yeah. All assaults were on women aged 71 to 89. And on 24th of March 2011, Grant was found guilty of all offenses charged. He was sentenced to 4 concurrent life sentences with a recommendation that he should serve 27 years before
5 minutes.
Yeah. To serve 27 years before being eligible to apply for parole. I don't think anyone like him should be released because I don't think...
Wait, sorry. So we're talking 2010, 27 years. So 2037 is when he can start applying for parole. Yeah. Oh my God. Did you see I shared with you Yolanda Salazar?
Yeah.
Who is the one who killed Selena. Check out one of the episodes in season 1. We covered this case, but she meets the criteria, I think, to apply for parole.
Yeah.
Yeah. Crazy. Anyways, going.
I would love to look into the number of people that don't reoffend in these sort of cases.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
Let's do that.
So, Grant was also given concurrent 8-year sentences for 7 indecent assaults and concurrent 6-year sentences for 18 burglaries and attempted burglaries. So
I hate concurrent sentences as well. Someone come and fucking explain this shit.
Yeah.
You know?
Get someone on.
Surely you get to a point where you're like we talked about in the Petra case, well, I've committed so many crimes now that I might as well commit more because
Yeah. Like double jeopardy, huh?
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So here's the shortened timeline. I'm going to give you a breakdown of the timeline. So in 1990, police say there are probable offenses as far back as 1990. 1992, first offense linked to Grant is committed in Shirley and Croydon. 1997, second offense is reported beginning a more frequent series of attacks. 1998, Operation Minstead is launched. 2004, the police carry out DNA testing of possible suspects in South London. 2004, again in July, detectives announced that they have narrowed the initial list of 21,000 potential suspects to 1,000. 2006, the Met police officers issue a direct appeal to the rapist to give himself up, encouraging him to use his conscience, quote unquote, and come forward to seek help.
No, you use your police detection skills. Don't wait for
Yeah.
them to have a fucking moral compass. Jesus.
Then 2009, police arrest a 52-year-old man in connection with more than 100 sex attacks. The arrest was described as significant.
Wait, was that Delroy Grant?
Yeah.
Okay.
Then, later that year, police charge him with multiple rapes. 2011, he appears at Woolwich Crown Court and his trial begins. March 2011, he's found guilty on all counts and given 4 life sentences with a minimum of 27 years to be served. So this starts in 1990 that we're aware of and runs until 2011. So, when Delroy Grant was exposed as the evil Nightstalker, many of his friends and neighbors were stunned. And this is what I find fucking fascinating, because as you know, I'm always interested in the psychology behind these people.
Because when Colin said, when he compared Levi Belfield to Delroy Grant, Levi Belfield, and we hear stories all the time about, because he used to work on a lot of the doors around here, whatever. So we meet people all the time who came across him, and everyone says the same thing. He was a fucking wrong'un, and you could spot a mile off that he was like not someone, like he was a bad egg.
News. Yeah, bad news. Mm-hmm.
And whereas Delroy Grant had 2 sides to him.
And this is what scares me. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was
and
perceived...
that scared Colin as well, didn't it?
Yeah. And he was perceived as a pillar of the community and described as softly spoken, mild-mannered, devoted to his wife and children. Now, his first wife says different. At night, he drove his taxi, and during the day, he was a full-time carer to ex-partner Jennifer Edwards, who suffered with aggressive multiple sclerosis.
So is that how he had the sort of, I won't say medical, but the sort of knowledge on how to treat someone with a fragile body, let's say?
Yeah, could be that, because he was her carer. Also, could be the relationship with his mother, which I would love to know more about. Because that clearly was something that affected him. So on the face of it, it seems like he was an upstanding citizen who cared for others. So it was a shock when people discovered he'd been terrorizing elderly in their own homes. Even when he was arrested by the police, they recall Grant being a charmer, a nice guy, and a regular guy.
And he was religious as well, wasn't he? Or
he was a Jehovah's Witness.
Which for us is a red flag. Sorry, Jehovah's.
But then others say that he just used to accompany his wife to do the door knocking. So who knows how invested he was. I mean, I'm not a fan of them. If ever you've seen a documentary about them, you will not be either. But others close to him reported a darker side. So Grant's first wife, Janet Watson, says he was constantly trying to inflict pain on her and carried on even when she was about to give birth. And in a clip from The Real Manhunt, she explains, he likes to hit and punch and kick. He'd do anything to give me pain, and he let me know. When I was in labor, he attacked me. That's his way. So Grant,
it's like he realized with the second wife, I can't get away with this behavior with my actual wife. I've got to do it elsewhere.
Possibly, but I always wonder if the partners are a cover, Or are they just the one putting them up? Or was she on benefits that he benefited from?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Was there another reason that he, didn't mistreat her? Because he clearly has it in him to mistreat people.
But did the second wife say anything similar?
No, that I'm aware of.
Yeah. So he might have realized, I need to do this elsewhere.
So, possibly. Grant met Jane in 1975, and they got engaged just 2 weeks later and married later that year, going on to have 2 children, Delroy Jr. and Michael. So when Grant was finally caught, he attempted to shift the focus of the investigation.
Hang on, wait, my earphones fell off. I can't hear you. Sorry, go on.
When Grant
they slid off with the sweat on my ears.
So when Grant was finally caught, he attempted to shift the focus of the investigation into the mass burglaries and rapes onto his own son. So the guy, yeah.
What?
Yeah, let me tell you.
So his son is also called Delroy Grant?
Yes.
So he was trying to say, oh no, it's that Delroy Grant?
Yes. So let me go into it. So Julie Balfour, a detective,
what a dick!
Yeah, he really is. When he was, so she says, when he was...
Say her name, because I talked over it. Detective blah, blah, blah.
Julie Balfour, a detective constable in the case, said when he had his DNA taken, he made the comment that perhaps police should look at his son, as obviously their DNA would be similar and it might have been his son who committed the offenses. And during Grant's trial, the court heard how he told an officer he did not want to fit anyone up. Asking what he meant, the court heard he told the officer, "Have you thought about my son, Delroy Jr.? He lives in the right area and he's the same height as me." So he fucking really went in on his son. The police, however, quickly eliminated Delroy Jr. from inquiries. Now, our dearest love, former DCI Colin Sutton, the detective responsible.
It's not our former love.
Our current.
Our very active, ongoing love.
He was responsible. He was responsible for leading the hunt for Grant and said, "Even so, to hear your father has suggested to police you could be guilty of these really serious and crazy offenses. How would anyone feel about their father saying that to them?"
I mean, this poor guy's already had to find out that his father has committed them.
Yeah. So Janet says what hurt her most was not what Grant did to her, but how he turned on his own sons. She adds, "He's not mad. He knows what he's doing. He's not mad, just bad. He'll never say sorry and he'll never show remorse. He never has. I don't believe he ever will." It came as a shock to many when the supposed loving husband and family man was named as the Nightstalker, because of the supposed double life that he had led, you know. With Grant continuing to evade capture, Detective Chief Inspector Colin Sutton, who was responsible in leading the successful hunt for Levi Belfield, he was asked in 2009 to review the case. And Colin Sutton was the one that caught Delroy Grant following a large, complex investigation. He was disgusted by what he heard from some of the victims, including a partially blind 93-year-old woman who died just weeks after being attacked in her own home. And this is what Colin said, which was also heartbreaking. "She extended her hand as if to shake hands, so I took it, but she was pulling me down closer to her, and she whispered to me, 'He interfered with me, you know.'" Oh. And she gave up eating. This is what Colin said. Just stopped eating, gave up on life after that. Within 6 weeks, she was dead.
He killed her.
I had the conversation with her daughter, who said he's killed her. I said, "Yes, he's killed her, just as surely as if he'd stabbed her or shot her." And Colin said, "Meeting people like her and seeing and hearing what he had done made me realize how much more important it was. I really felt anger and hate for him at that point." So working with Detective Superintendent Simon Morgan and the Minstead team, Colin proposed a strategy he believed could catch one of Britain's most prolific rapists, focusing a vast surveillance operation around a key area of southeast London. So scores of additional officers were deployed to invisibly saturate the targeted area on a nightly basis.
Wait, did you say invisibly or visibly?
Invisibly. Okay. But with the offenses scattered around a dense area, it was like finding a needle in a haystack. So Colin said 160 square miles, it's about 160 square miles, it's about 2.5 million people living in that area. It's in kind of dense urban housing. Trying to find one man in the area is extremely difficult. So there was a near miss in which Grant committed 2 rapes very close to the team surveillance area. After 17 days of the stakeout, a suspect was seen running towards a silver Vauxhall Zafira.
Did they they already had this Vauxhall Zafira on their radar?
Yeah. Matching the previous description, so the decision was taken to stop the driver. The officer who pulled the car over, David Matthews, said, "I was quite aware that if this was the suspect, that he'd be prepared to fight. I spoke to him. He was quite chatty. He even had a bit of banter with a colleague. We searched the car and I opened the boot. There were latex gloves, a crowbar. There was a balaclava in there. Yeah, what I would deem as a bit of a burglar's kit." And then he looked at me and he said, "What's this really about?" And I just said to him, "I think you know what it's really about." and it was like someone had switched a light out in him. His eyes kind of just glazed over and he never spoke a word. And I think that describes the two sides of Delroy Grant. You know, I'd love to know if he really was both people. And this is what I asked Colin about. Was he really both people? Was the nice guy act an act, or was there a side to him that genuinely was that? Or was that just a fucking cover?
Yeah. Was he like properly Jekyll and Hyde, like bipolar, borderline personality disorder, whatever, some condition where you literally do have multiple states of mind that are conflicting and very different? Or, like you say, was he just entirely faking the nice guy so that he could do whatever bad shit he wanted? Yeah,
that's what I'd love to know.
But do you know what? Do you know what? From past experience with relationships, it can be a bit of both. It can be a bit of both as well. They can have, you know, slightly different sides to them, but then they can exaggerate one, manipulate another, you know what I mean, to further suit their needs.
I'd love to know if they did a psych evaluation on him in prison.
I'm sure they must have done, right? How could they not?
I don't know. I need the answer. I really do. I'd love to know. Like with...
I'm Googling it now. I'm sorry, but we need to Google this right now.
Yeah.
Ugh,
Who's the one that Zac Efron covered? Who was the one that Zac Efron portrayed? Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy. I'd love to know Ted Bundy too. Like when he was with his partner who had a child, and the relationship with that child and the mother, was that genuine, or was that just a cover?
Sorry, things that have come up in my search, right? First wife, they divorced because he beat her and he cheated on her with other women. Has he ever confessed? No. How many children did he have? 8 children.
I'm not fucking surprised.
It's really sad, isn't it?
I'm not surprised if he's cheating and raping. Cut that out. But I'm not surprised.
Where is Colin Sutton now? In our hearts and in our minds. Yeah, sorry, I can't see anything about a psych evaluation. So whether that wasn't released or whatever, I'm sure they must have. I'm sure they must have. But I'm sure they... Well, I guess it depends what he was pleading, but they might have had to do one ahead of the trial to assess whether he was mentally fit enough to stand trial. I don't know. But yeah. Fuck knows.
So, on that note, we're taking a break.
Welcome back from the break. Hope you enjoyed whatever adverts we made you listen to, or maybe you just fast forwarded.
So, who is our man Colin Sutton? If you don't know by now, season 2, you haven't been listening. So, Colin Sutton was the SIO in the Met Police from January 2003 to January 2011, leading more than...
SIO being Senior Investigative Officer.
Yep, leading more than 30 successful murder investigations, notably the Levi Belfield case, episode 2, season 1. He held the rank of Detective Chief Inspector in various roles for a total of 15 years in 3 different police forces. So more on how Grant was caught. He was arrested on 15th of November 2009 when police officers covertly monitoring the area of Croydon following attempted break-ins found him walking back to his car after trying to enter an elderly woman's home, as we said. And when Colin was drafted in to solve the case, he applied the same techniques he had used when searching for Belfield. He decided to change tactics from using DNA and instead set up a burglary squad of over 70 officers and deployed them in and around a street in Croydon where there had been regular attacks. And Colin established an in-depth surveillance plan for the street. And on the first night of watch, the Nightstalker Delroy Grant attacked 3 times, but each attack was just outside the area being watched. However, police managed to catch Grant running to his car on CCTV and examined each frame to identify his vehicle. And despite having very little evidence, his painstaking approach and the diligence of his fellow officers gradually led to breakthroughs in the case. And in an interview with Crime and so it was Colin's long-held belief that DNA screening should only be a last resort tactic, And in the early hours, sorry, hold on, blah, blah, blah. In the early hours.
Start that from the beginning.
Okay.
The Colin's tactic, whatever.
It was Colin's long-held belief that DNA screening should only be a last resort tactic, and in the early hours of 25th of May 2009, a burglary took place in Bromley, in the home of an elderly woman and her son. It was reported to Colin's team, but discounted because the perpetrator hadn't stolen anything and had not interacted with the victims. But when the son noticed, this is interesting, the volume of orange juice in a carton in the fridge had reduced overnight, it was swabbed. The DNA was an exact match to Grant's. Colin's team also found on neighbor CCTV footage of the bottom half of Grant as he walked to the house. And crucial information also came from victims' debit cards. After one offense, 3 attempts were made to use a victim's bank card at a cash machine in Honor Oak Park in southeast London. The same machine had been used by Grant 2 years previously, and Simon Morgan had arranged for CCTV to be installed in case the suspect returned. Colin decided to put surveillance on this machine from midnight until 5:30 a.m. So 4 or 5 nights later, Grant was in the home of an 82-year-old woman in Lee, and at 5:36, the officers left their post. But 7 minutes later, at 5:43, Grant appeared on the cameras to make his illicit withdrawal. They had missed him by the narrowest margins of 6 minutes. Yeah. The pain of that failure remained with Colin and his team until they finally arrested Grant. And when they did, those pictures of the blue cagoule that Grant was known for wearing were to become very important. But the analyst, Richard Moore, found his favorite hunting ground was around the A232 at Shirley, east of Croydon. And they restricted their watch to an area of 2 miles that would make it just possible to contain. So by observing every inch of the pavement in the target roads, with about 70 officers hiding in houses and buildings, and with hidden cameras to fill the gaps, Colin's team ensured no one could walk in or out without them seeing. And the team had also used a control room at Central 3000, an anonymous office block near Vauxhall. This had a bank of 18 TV screens across one wall, into which the feed from any of the thousands of local authority or Transport for London CCTV cameras could be piped and recorded, as well as images from their own hidden cameras. So on 20th of October, that was the first day of surveillance. And Grant had been busy, and the surveillance team were all watching the Shirley plot while he had committed 3 burglaries. The time span between them, less than 30 minutes, from the second to the third, made it virtually impossible that he could have got between them by foot. So he
committed multiple crimes in the same night?
Yeah. So he would have had to be driving, and the most logical route would have been down Orchard Way, straight through the middle of the surveillance plot. They had definitely not seen any black male pedestrians, so one of the handful of cars they had watched go past just a few hours ago had to have been Delroy Grant. And CCTV from a school revealed what had to be the target vehicle passing south at 5:13 a.m. It was silver or grey, possibly an estate. Colin knew where his next inquiry would be made. Andy Wooler at the Transport Research Laboratory, and that's Colin's go-to person for identifying cars. And he actually turned up trumps in the Belfield case. So within 20 minutes, Colin had his answer. He was 75% certain it was a Vauxhall Zafira, the B model. And on the second night of surveillance, an alert came from Lambeth, the furthest north of any of the offences. The victim had called 999 when she heard an intruder, and an officer in a response car had spotted the fleeing figure and given chase on foot only to lose him. Colin's first concern was that he might have changed his target area so significantly because the surveillance detail had leaked. Perhaps more worrying was trying to imagine how Grant would react to this very close shave. So if he had stopped defending, the surveillance operation would be useless, and the surveillance would be back to square one. For a couple of weeks, this slick and intensive surveillance came to nothing. Then on Saturday evening, which was November the 14th, ironically Colin's first weekend off, he was jolted awake by his mobile phone at 1:30 a.m. And DI Nathan Easton said to him, "It looks like we've got him." Surveillance officers had noticed a Vauxhall Zafira on Orchard Way, and a man jogging towards the car and driving away. And in Central 3000, where they were stationed, the surveillance team, Nathan had made all the right calls. So the mobile surveillance team sprang into action, following him for about 3 miles until they intercepted him as he turned into a street of terraced homes, which was his typical territory. And in the glove compartment was the black balaclava, the blue cagoule, tossed in the passenger seat. And the clothes were, as we mentioned, accompanied by a crowbar, a torch, and was later to prove that this, and later they proved that it was a screwdriver that had left so many distinctive marks on the window panes.
Fucking caught because of the screwdriver, hey?
Yeah. So although he thought he was clever not leaving fingerprints, he did leave his mark literally. So after 17 years of Minstead, the new strategy had got him in 17 days. And Colin described this as the emotion, the pride, and relief were similar to what I had felt when the emotion, the pride, and relief were similar to what I had felt when Levi Belfield had been convicted. It was what I went to work for. So that
I feel really emotional and proud of him.
So that's Colin.
What a man.
Yeah, Colin played
what
a massive
hunk.
role. Yeah, what a hunk. The ultimate one,
and
the benchmark.
This episode comes out after CrimeCon Glasgow, but next weekend I'm going to be having what I like to call my dirty weekend with Colin.
Oh, jealous. So many women across the country are going to be jealous of you, Dee. So Grant is now serving a 27-year prison term that he received in 2011 at HMP Belmarsh in Thamesmead. He was given concurrent 8-year sentences for 7 indecent assaults and concurrent 6-year sentences for 18 burglaries and attempted burglaries.
He should have been fucking done for murder for that woman that basically...
I know. And I'm never going to cover another case that involves elderly ladies because I'm going to put that in the same category as babies and children.
You know, so I go to regular counseling with a lovely lady called Susanna. Hi, Susanna. I don't know if you're listening to this for extra insight into what the fuck is wrong with me, but she told me that her mum is actually like an extra actress, you know, like does bit part acting here and there, and that her mum in the Martin Clunes dramatization, where season 1 they cover Levi Belfield, season 2 they cover Delroy Grant, that her mum was one of the actresses that was assaulted in that show. And I was like, Susanna, how did you even fucking watch your mum acting that out, right? Even that would be fucking traumatic. Yeah. You know, I always wonder, like...
What was her answer?
She was like, well, obviously I knew it was acting. And I was like, oh, yes, a high-functioning adult that you are. But, you know, like... Because I always think, like, when... You know, when you have like actors and stuff that have to do sex scenes, I always think like, oh my God, I would be mortified if I was an actor and my parents had to watch me in a sex scene. But this is next level.
Yeah.
Your daughter having to watch a scene where you're being fucking sexually, oh, it's just awful. Yeah. So yeah, like even that, I was like, how did you cope with that? Like,
yeah,
it's just awful. Awful.
But amazing work by our man, Colin.
So you said 17 years of this Minstead operation, and how many days? 17 days?
Yeah, how many days? They found him. 17 years, and they found him in 17 days with the new strategy, with Colin's strategy. But this has prompted me really to look into the alleged
every one of Colin's movements.
Yeah, we need to get him back on the line. Yeah. But yeah, I'd love to know.
I'm going to text him now.
When offenders have breaks, alleged breaks, are they breaks or are there just unreported crimes? Or what prompts those breaks? As you said, you know.
I'm sending Colin a message. What should I tell him? Just recording.
I sent him a message just yesterday, actually.
An episode with my sis. She is presenting the Delroy Grant case to me. So obviously 90% of it is us professing It says autocorrect to progressing, but that's also true. Professing our love and admiration
Yeah. I'm surprised
for
this
you and your work. I was going to say keep it up, but I feel like...
Keep on keeping on, Colin.
Yeah. Keep on tracking. See you in Glasgow. Don't mean for that to sound as threatening as it does.
Then add XOXO.
There's a heart emoji. Okay. Make sure I check it after People's Pulse to see if he's replied.
I don't know how we're not blocked.
I don't know how we don't have fucking restraining orders. We've probably been secretly put on some sort of register just in case anything happens to Colin. We'll get a fucking knock on our door. We've got a few questions for you, ladies. Did we say that, like, at CrimeCon, one of the women was like, "Oh yeah, we're called the Colin Suttons."
Did they?
And I was like, "That's a beautiful name."
Did they really? I love them. Why are we not friends with them?
I don't know, but I was like, I want in. I would like to officially declare my Colin Suttonness.
Oh, Mrs. Sutton is fucking lucky, huh?
And Mrs. Sutton, we love you as much. I don't want you to feel for a minute that if we even had a chance to, we'd want to take him away from you, because we just love everything.
She must be a good woman, huh? She must be a good woman. Oh,
yeah. You know how we know she's a good woman? Because do you remember CrimeCon? He had to leave early because she was ill.
Oh.
And you know what that man did? He fucking got in a taxi to rush back home to his wife.
Cute. Love him. That says it all. That says it
I
all.
need to find a man like Colin Sutton
Deanna,
who treats me
episode.
like Deanna, No, you said I needed Colin Sutton. And that's not a realistic...
You are repeating what I said. A Steve Gaskin, a Stephen Keogh, a Colin Sutton.
Yeah.
They're all fucking taken, unfortunately.
I know. You're listing married men who are perhaps age inappropriate. So this is why...
Age appropriate. In my mind.
And if you need to understand that further, listen to the episode where we talk about Randa's weird crushes. Are you done now? Because this seems like a perfect
Let's fucking
segue.
move on. Let's fucking move on. Okay, good.
All right,
okay.
So
do you even know the topic of
wait, first I want to, before we do that, the announcement I wanted to tell you about that you completely forgot about is that we fucking picked a jingle.
Yes.
So I haven't worked out yet whether, I think rather than like the intro that we have at the beginning of the podcast where we talk over some key facts and figures and how to basically throw your money at us, I think I just want to have this jingle, which I'll play for you in a minute. I just want to have it underneath us going, it's time for the People's Pulse. And like, just while we're talking, you know what I mean? So I'm going to play it now. Okay, good. Just bear with me 1 second. 1 second. All right, here we go. Oh, it makes my heart race.
Oh, it's great. This is exactly what I imagined, like the news.
People's Pulse. People's Pulse. People's Pulse. People's Pulse. Changes up a bit. Oh, so fucking dramatic.
Exactly what I imagined.
Okay. So dramatic. Dramatique, like us. Okay, so we're moving on to People's Pulse. People's Pulse.
Okay, the topic, because we want to put everyone in a good mood now. So the topic is, I asked, it wasn't actually a very popular question, you know? Oh. I think it's because it's not necessarily a funny one, you know? Or a polarizing one.
Well, we live and learn, and we'll moderate, we'll pick the questions accordingly.
But we got good responses.
But also, I think you made a poll asking if anyone had any questions. Yeah. So do send us those. Yes. If you've got any suggested questions for People's Pulse. People's Pulse.
Yes. I like the polarizing questions though. But anyway, okay. So the first respondent. Oh, I love him so much.
Wait, did you say the fucking question?
Oh, yeah. So the question is, I asked what people's ideal first dates would be.
Okay. So, and wait, before you give, we need to fucking formalize this procedure because
Okay.
we're all over the shop here. We're all over the shop. I feel like, first of all, we should announce that it's the People's Pulse.
Yes.
With the music playing in the background, which
Yes.
I'll put in post. Then you should tell us what the actual fucking question is.
Yes.
And then you and I should answer it before we go fucking...
Oh, yes. Okay.
Right? Okay, so, question.
Yes. The question is, what is an ideal first date? Or your ideal first date?
You go.
Okay, so I had to really think about this because it's been a fucking long time since I've been on a first date. So I thought, what would the me at my age now do on a first date? Because back in the day, the only dates I'd ever been on were going for a drink. What the fuck else was there? You know, you go to the pub, you go for a drink.
Yeah, same.
But then, like...
You just talk about mortgages and contents insurance at the pub, that's all.
But then, like, some people go, like, rock climbing on a first date or roller skating or weird shit like that. I'm not that kind of person. I'm not a doer type of person, you know? So...
Or a people kind of person?
Not that either, yeah. So I thought, okay, what would the me, 38-year-old me, want to do on a first date? And then I thought, you know what, if somebody's actually said to me, hypothetically, single 38 me, you know, if they said, let's go to the Harvester or the Toby Carvery, I'd be fucking sold. And you know, it's funny because I read an article the other day about how only London people will get this, but London stops where the Toby Carvery starts.
Yes.
And it made me laugh because it's so true. Because I was like, why the fuck do we not have Toby Carveries in London? Because we don't. So for our non-UK listeners, Toby Carvery is like this chain. I don't know. I guess it's like the Olive Garden, but like of roast dinners.
Yeah.
So it's like
roast buffet style. Yeah. All you can eat roast dinner is what it is.
And they're in like these fake Tudor buildings, so they kind of look cute, but they're, you know, not really old.
As you said, they're not in London. So for us Londoners-ish, they're a novelty. Or they're like a sign of a road trip or something. You know what I mean?
It's funny because, yeah, exactly. Because they seem kind of quaint. Because they're sort of suburban, you know? Yeah. Anyway, so, yeah. So, and also because you know what I like about it? It's humble. It's honest. You know what you're getting at a Harvester or a Toby Carvery. It's unpretentious. So if somebody said to me, let's go to the Harvester or the Toby Carvery, I'd be like, yes, you're like me. You like to eat, which is always good. One thing in common. You like modesty.
You like value for money.
You don't like pretentiousness.
Yeah.
You like a homely surrounding because both are very cozy and homely. And a Harvester, I fucking tell you what, I love their salad bar. Most of it isn't salad. It's great. You
I don't think chips,
you want.
Chips don't really count as a salad.
Or potato salad.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah. So that's my first answer. Then it's like, then I thought, okay, like, you know, I'm also kind of outdoorsy with age. So like a river walk, is that a date thing? A trip to the beach? I think I would like that. Then I thought, like, maybe if they weren't a great conversationalist, which is more my kind of thing too, you know, because
what, you're not a great conversationalist? No,
I don't need them to be.
No, but you do, because you want someone you can fucking chat to.
I want them just to respond to what I'm saying.
No, you want them to agree with what you're saying.
Yeah. So, like, let's say they weren't a great conversation.
And then praise you for saying it.
Yeah. Ideal. Where do I find them? Do you know someone?
Clearly,
so
Single
then,
D does not.
But then I thought if they're not a great conversationalist, then maybe like crazy golf. I don't know. That could be funny. I mean, I don't know. It's not my kind of thing, but you know. Okay, so those are my ideas. I don't know. I'm old and rusty, so I don't know what people do on first dates.
I like some of what you say. For me, on a first date, I like to be able to fucking talk to them because if they're, if I want to fucking know if there's any point in a second date, it's handy having some kind of activity icebreaker thing. I don't think I'd pick crazy golf.
What would you pick for an activity? If somebody suggested go ape or rock climbing,
no, because that kind of activity is like not actually one where you can talk.
And those kind of anyone that likes that shit, it's not for us.
Well, no, see, because I wouldn't mind that, but like, it's like I wouldn't want to go to the cinema for a first date because, like, hi, my name's Dee, and you are blah blah blah. Let's go sit for 2 hours in silence.
Yeah.
Even if you go for a drink or something after, it's just weird. Like,
I agree with you about the cinema thing. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And that goes for any activity where you actually can't properly talk. So like you were saying, going for a walk or something, like going to a beach or whatever, that sounds super cute. And like going to a pub, you know what I mean? Going for a walk and going to the pub, that sounds great because you get to chat, got a little bit of an icebreaker activity going on, but you can actually kind of figure out whether...
Do you know what, though? Do you know what? I'm such a messy eater, though. Like, I probably shouldn't eat.
Well, I am not in my answer taking into consideration as well, like, safety issue or blah blah blah, like, because for me, I'm like, first date, fucking coffee or a drink, something that where I've not committed too much time, so that if I chip off and like after an hour.
Can I just also add, I hope to God that I never have to have a first date because I'm happily married. This is hypothetical, but
I will say I had to think about this a lot as well, because the last time I was like dating and having first dates and stuff, I was a bit cheeky in that, well, no, I don't think this is cheeky. Tell me, fucking slide into our DMs and tell me if I'm an asshole. But if a guy like asked me on a date, I would ask them to, like, I'd be like, you decide where we go. Like, and I wasn't being vague, you know, I'd be like, oh, I'm happy to go for a meal or drinks or whatever, but like, take me somewhere that you know is nice or whatever. Because in my mind, I was like, where a guy picks is very interesting and insightful.
Yes, it is.
About them, about what they think of you. And like I said, I would try to give them clues. I'd be like, I don't want to go to like a fancy bar. I'm quite happy to go to a pub, or, you know, these are the kinds of foods I like. And again, it doesn't have to be fucking Michelin star or whatever. But like, I also, my logic was, even if this doesn't work out, maybe I'll find some cute, like some nice new restaurants. You know what I mean? So yeah, I had to think, because I was like, even when I was going on first dates, I wasn't the one suggesting where and what. So yeah, I'd say, to be honest, kind of similar to you. I'm not specific to a brand of pub, like Tony Carvery or Harvester, but I do just like going and having a fucking drink and a chat on a first date. And, you know, if it could be somewhere with a nice view.
Imagine if somebody took you to a club night on the first date.
And I mean, do you know what? That probably early 20s D would have been okay with that, but yeah.
Worst nightmare.
I mean, the dream is that on a first date, someone takes me to the motherfucking Maldives.
I know, I was just gonna say.
We can have conversation there. Can find out if I'm happy to go on a second date to the fucking Dominican Republic.
So it's interesting, because I think people are either like, on a first date, they either want to sit and chat and get to know the person, or they want to do something that's an icebreaker so they don't have to chat too much and do something with an activity. See,
I like where the icebreaker you can still talk through, and it can help you, literally like an icebreaker, if you're struggling with the conversation. It's a, you know what I mean? And also, like, you know me, we were talking about this in our crushes, blah blah blah. Like, it has to be someone funny. I can't be with someone who takes themselves too seriously. Funny is number one. So it's like, and I can't be with someone who takes themselves too seriously. They have to be able to like fucking laugh at themselves, laugh with me, not laugh at me. I do not fucking like that. But, you know, so doing something that's like a little bit silly or whatever is, again, really insightful, isn't it?
Yes.
So yeah.
So
yeah, I'm available.
My favorite response.
Any fun first dates.
But you have to go. They gotta go through my DMs first, that I can quality control.
Don't bother going through my personal Instagram. I won't be fucking looking at that. Go through my fucking gatekeeper there. I actually have my own submission from someone else. Should I do it first?
Yeah, go.
This is from James Hartnett, who is a scientist with the fucking biggest biceps I've ever seen in my life. And definitely the biggest biceps I've ever seen on a fucking scientist. He says, a trip to Virginia Water. Walk around the lake and then go to the pub there.
Do you know what? That's fucking just summarized perfect, huh?
Yeah.
Virginia
and for those of you who don't know,
stunning.
Virginia Water is place just outside London. It's near Windsor, so it's part of the Windsor Great Parks. And there's one area of it, the Virginia Water itself, which is like this beautiful lake, and you can walk all the way around it. It doesn't take that long. And they've got, I don't know if you, when's the last time you went there?
The 90s.
The 90s. School trip. But they had like these ancient Roman ruins from Libya, just randomly. It's one of the ones that like some rich fucking British guy brought back to put in his garden or whatever. But there's like waterfalls and all sorts, and then there's several pubs along the way, so you can stop and have like a drink in this gorgeous area.
Well,
so yeah, that is fucking perfect. Perfect.
Well, I hope you enjoy that.
Oh no, he says. He says a walk around Virginia Water, ice cream, and pub afterwards.
Well, we are all looking forward to seeing the pictures from your date there with him.
So yeah, there you go. What are the submissions for the official channels?
So I think I completely fell in love with one of our submitters, and that is just the most beautiful host of the Scream Queer podcast.
Ralph.
What a gorgeous
Ralph.
Man.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Painfully beautiful.
I could look at him all day.
Yeah, and listen to him because his voice is like silk.
It's like fucking butter. It's like chocolate. Oh,
yes.
Yeah. Ralph, we do you know what? I actually talked to Ralph about a collab, and then it kind of, because he's in LA, so that fucking time difference is killer.
I love him so much.
But yeah, let's make it happen now. Let's really make it happen. But tell us his.
Do you know what he said? He said his ideal first date is when they cancel on him, and I just fell in love with him 10 times more. And I messaged him immediately, and I said, I am you and you are me. And then I said, you're my ideal first date, and can we just sit next to each other and play on our phones and ignore each other in our pajamas together? That would be our ideal first date. And I love him so much. Unfortunately, I'm not his type.
No, not enough penis on you.
I love him.
That is the sign of someone who's done a lot of online dating.
I love him so much.
I love him
because
too.
He's not a people person.
Can we be in some kind of throuple where we both just like have Netflix documentaries, true crime documentaries on the TV? We lounge around in our pants and our pajamas, and we drink wine. Well, I drink wine because you don't like to drink very much. I wonder if Ralph will drink with me. And we play with our phones and just occasionally order Deliveroo.
Love it. Who the fuck would cancel on him though? Are they crazy?
Whoever is canceling on Ralph, you are fucking stupid. And I don't like to call people stupid, but you are literally fucking moronic.
Yeah.
He is better than you, and you don't deserve him.
Perfection.
So it's good. It's good that you cancelled on him, because it saves us having to fucking car park chat you.
Because he's too good. Ralph is too good for you.
Oh.
So
submissions to date Ralph through us also, because that bar, it's almost no point you applying. The bar is high.
I love him so much.
Ugh.
And then Isla of Criminally Good Books York fame. I think our listeners know of Isla. She's almost like an invisible third person here.
She's another person we just need to get on the podcast, at least for like
we should. I mean, she's in the crime world, huh? Okay, so basically I had to get her to elaborate, because
as I know, she's bonkers. Yeah, I do know that.
Okay, so then she said champagne and not getting too hot. I was like, can I have more, please? And then she said, my date takes me to a bookshop and says, get whatever you want, and then we have bubbles. But she said, like, not too hot, like not having a date in London when it's the height of summer and your feet are so hot and you feel minging, but having a spring date with lots of bubbles. So that's her ideal first date.
I have to explain and elaborate that she is ginger and she suffers in the heat, and I'm doing air quotes because the heat for her is anything like above 10 degrees. Yeah. Do you remember the time me and her, we worked together for a charity, and I convinced her to do a 10K with me in center of town? And to be fair, it was really fucking hot. And if anyone's done any kind of organized run, you normally end up in a fucking pen for hours before they even let you start running, because all the fucking pro athletes and veterans and whatever, they start ahead of you. And before the fucking race, I remember it was surreal because
when she got a migraine,
they had Katrina and the Waves playing on a balcony to keep us entertained while we're in this fucking you know, kettle situation, like. But before we even started, I literally was watching this ginger Scottish lady turn bright red. Like, I was watching her get sunburnt in front of my very eyes. Then we start the 10K run, which I was training for quite rigorously because it was part of my training for a half marathon. Isla went on 2 jogs with me in lunch. Like, yeah, not best prepared. We made it to the end, but also, she won't mind me telling the story. She has no shame. Halfway through the run, she got her period.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
I was like, any other dramas you want to have? I mean, 10K is like a fucking hour run. I mean, anything else?
Is it only an hour?
Well,
really?
Not for Isla. Not
But
for Isla.
most people, for runners, is that only an hour?
I
10K?
used to be able to do 10K in just like literally minutes over an hour, which is not a good time. It's not a good time. Like there's people that can do that fucking much faster. I was never a fast runner. But yeah.
I don't understand running. So our next submission is Chris. And he said, it sounds like a really nice one, a beer garden in Primrose Hill on a balmy summer's evening. And for those who are not Londoners or based in the UK, Primrose Hill is like one of the nicest parts of London where a lot of the celebrities live. Really beautiful.
Cute, really picturesque, beautiful houses, lots of pub gardens with like gorgeous flowers, that kind of shit.
Yeah. And then we have a really cute submission from Karen, who says, a few drinks with a pool table and the option to dance the night away to 90s pop, which she told me was her first date with her wife, Sarah. So shout out to Karen and Sarah. So I like the submissions we have. So hopefully that gave you some ideas for some first dates.
I wouldn't, I know I was like, I don't want anyone who takes himself too seriously. I wouldn't play pool because I'm just so bad at it that I don't enjoy it. Like there's lots of things that I can be very bad at and still laugh and find funny, but pool for me is frustrating. I think because I want to be really good at it. I would love.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but there's something about playing pool that makes you just want to throw the fucking pool cue.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Yeah.
Don't know why.
Yeah. But totally appreciate that other people might be more rational in their emotions and their responses towards the game of pool. We're not those people. Yeah, that's great. That was awesome. So keep an eye out in our stories. As always, we'll be asking the questions for the next People's Pulse. Next
week, we'll do a controversial one, a polarizing one, or a fucking funny one.
See, the thing with this question was,
I feel like I learned about people. I feel like I did learn about people.
Which is lovely, but most of the answers are going to be like, oh yeah, that is cute. Not for me, but that's cute. Whereas like when we ask the weird crushes, it's like, I'm sorry, what? Omid Jalali in The Infidel? I still think about that and laugh. Yeah, I know. I just love that you have a specific Omid era where you fancy him.
Yeah. Well, I don't, but my point was that humor maketh the man.
Really does.
That film was fucking funny. Maybe you have to be Arab, Muslim, or Jewish to find it funny, to really understand the humor, but because we're familiar with all communities involved in the film, it's hilarious.
I need to rewatch it because I know I watched it when it came out. Yeah, I remember it was funny. Yeah. I don't remember fancying Omid Jalali in it, but I remember it was funny. But I watched it when it first came out, and I don't think I've seen it since, so I really don't remember very much apart from the general storyline. Yeah, right. So editor D, let's do all this shit herself now. Can you cue in the jingle? Cue in the jingle. People's Pulse, People's Pulse, People's Pulse, People's Pulse. Let's just leave a break for me to play a bit longer. It loops, it's about a minute long. And we'll cut it there. Okay, cool. So, yay! Next week.
See, we're in a good mood now, huh?
I am.
It's almost like we forgot what we just talked about.
I forgot what the content of our podcast is.
Season 3, we're gonna have a rebrand. It's gonna be called the People's Pulse.
People's Pulse. People's Pulse with the Safier sisters. Because guys, we literally were texting the other day about how we love that people have been referring to us as the Safier sisters. And we love that.
In almost 40 years, have we never referred to ourselves as the Safdie sisters until now?
I don't know. Has anyone else?
I don't know, but it even has alliteration and everything. But yeah, let's like stick with true crime for the rest of season 2. Get CrimeCon done. Rebrand.
Don't make me find another co-host for another podcast. I want to still do the true crime stuff. We can do a spin-off. Look, why don't we do extended?
Oh, good, more work. Good. We
more
have
work
time
for me.
that.
Yeah. Totally have capacity. Yeah, but we can do some extended people's pulses for Patreon.
Oh, good. Extra work. Yeah, love that.
Yeah, but like, let's do some work that people have to fucking pay for us, you know?
I love that for you.
Hi, boys. I'm in my pants.
My Primark naive from the 2006 era, I think.
Is it the 90, did you say?
Yeah.
Nah. Everything is loungewear. Since COVID, everything is loungewear, isn't it?
It's hard to distinguish the difference in my world.
Yeah, and by loungewear, I mean you can sleep in it, you can sit in it, you can go out in it.
Yeah.
You could probably take a job interview in half of it, bottom half.
Lines have been blurred.
Yeah. None of us know what the fuck we're doing anymore.
Do you know what we haven't had for a long fucking time? A review.
Oh, guys, do us a favor.
Every time I open a Chartable email the last few weeks, do you know what I see? No fucking review.
Boring stats. So if you're on Spotify, you can leave us. It literally takes a second. You don't have to write a fucking thing. You just need to pick 5 stars. Don't pick any of the other options. 5 stars. If you don't think we're 5 stars, don't worry about leaving a review. Don't worry. Ignore it. Fast forward. But we are still traumatized because we are like fucking Tinkerbell, where we kind of fade real fast if we don't get attention, you know? And we have our key suspects in mind, but someone left us a not a high rating on Spotify. Yeah. No, we've talked about this before.
We did. So
if you want to help boost it up a bit, boost it back up again, that would be really nice. And then if you go on to Apple Podcasts, if that's where you listen, which I know about 43% of you do, then you can write us a review and we would just fucking love it. Like, honestly, it's pathetic how happy it makes us.
Yeah, it does.
It puts in perspective.
Whoever sees it first, screenshots it, sends it to the other.
Yeah, and then we said it goes global. Whole family. Family in Palestine, family in Belgium, family in Brazil, people we've met once and Facebook friended. Yeah. All of these people fucking get it.
Yeah.
So yeah, do that. And obviously we've got all the normal stuff. We've got Patreon, we've got fucking merch. Our merch is awesome.
And so soft.
So soft. And we're working on some new stuff because, as you know, I mean, I've got our mug here that I'm drinking my rum and coke out of, but I think I need something a little bit more classy for my alcoholic beverages, for our nighttime recordings and for Drunk Real Housewives. But I also don't want wine glasses because, as we discussed, I spill everything and wine glasses I break. Like, I was looking at my wine glasses. I have not one matching wine glass. I have loads, but not 2 of them are the same because that is how many different sets I've gone through in my life with just one left from fucking crazy. So I was thinking like glass tumblers.
Love it.
Yeah.
They're all made of stainless steel in my house for that reason.
Crazy.
My wine glasses and my cups.
And you serve me, when I ask you for a coffee, you serve it to me in like a travel mug.
You're not the only clumsy person in this house.
Yeah. Genetic. Yeah. So, FYI, when I went for my boob consultation, they said that I have quite stretchy skin, which is good for some things, bad for others, blah, blah, blah. I faded out because, you know. But he said it was inherited. So you probably also have very stretchy skin.
Oh, I'll put it on my CV.
Yeah. Skills. Other interests. All right. Well, I think on that note, let's go.
Toodles.
Bye. Love you. Bye. 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 Mwah. Hi, everyone. This is the Switchblade Sister Social Club, and I am Dee, and this is where two sisters exploit their worst fears for your entertainment. Got my sister Randa here, who's on mute. It's really hot today.
Hi.
Hi. And we've got our favorite person in the whole world. He comes up in literally every single episode of our podcast, and we're in season 2 now, Colin Sutton.
Hello, nice to be back.
Colin. We're all a bit like, because this is actually the second time we've done the intro because I forgot to press record.
I wasn't going to tell anyone that.
Oh, I don't mind. You know, so I feel like it's good for us to be relatable and approachable and human, and you know, otherwise people put us on this pedestal. Yeah. Colin, you get that?
Yeah, I know.
You know, and we're just everyday normal people, us. You know? Who sometimes forget to press record. So we did an episode on Delroy Grant, which was one of your major breakthrough cases, and yep. I texted you while we were recording because any excuse to contact you, and I told you we're recording an episode on Delroy Grant, and you very kindly said, do you want me to come on and talk about it? And I was like, well, yeah, obviously. Was just nervous to ask because I'm so demanding of you and your time, and asking for videos, and you know, hang out with me in Glasgow at CrimeCon and all that kind of stuff. So you very kindly offered, and we jumped on that. So here you are. We're just really, really excited because this case was one that I didn't think we'd ever cover on the podcast, because my sister and I are particularly averse to cases where little sweet old ladies are the victims. So I was really shocked that she picked this case. I think she was shocked she picked this case, and I think it was mainly just an excuse to be able to talk about you as well a lot more.
Yeah, it felt like the right thing to do to actually explain the case that we had referenced several times, that Colin, you had referenced when we spoke to you last. So yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's never a pleasure looking into any of the cases, but we generally avoid anything that involves the elderly or children or babies. But yeah, I broke that rule this time.
Yeah, I was surprised. So here we are talking about it now, and but with the most amazing person to discuss this case with, and we're going to just get stuck right in. But first of all, I just want to say I'm super excited, Colin, because you and I are going on holiday this weekend, aren't we? Together.
We're going to Glasgow, yes.
That's literally how I refer it to. Like, I tell people I'm going on holiday with Colin Sutton. And then I explain, and then they're like, Dee, you're delusional. And it's like, I know. But the world up here is nicer than the real world. So we're going to get stuck in because we are just so honored, and also because I wasted about 10 minutes of your time already by not pressing record. So
I can do it better this time, so it's okay.
There you go. I mean, you were great first time around, but so the question was, what are the challenges that this case presented to the police force at the time?
This was when 2009, when I came into it, it was a case which had cropped up because of the case of John Warboys, the taxi driver rapist. The Commissioner, Sir Paul Simpson, was keen to do something about any other kind of outstanding sexual predator cases that have been running for a long while. And of course, this had been running since 1992 was the earliest offence. From 1998, it was a series, and because there were 2 rapes with the same DNA profile left in semen at both of them. And it had been investigated then for another 17 years. He'd never slipped up enough to be caught. There were, you know, literally hundreds, over 100 victims, serious offences. Every single one includes a burglary, and generally he would break in and he would wake a lone, normally female but sometimes male, old person who was in bed. Unlike most burglars who run a mile when somebody wakes up, he would actively wake the victim up and seek to engage with them. But he woke them up by straddling them, shining a torch in their face and telling them not to move and not to make a noise. And you can only imagine how terrifying that is for an elderly person in their own bed to be woken up by this black-clad masked figure with a torch. And of course, he'd do nasty things like turn the fuses off or pull the light bulbs out so they couldn't put the lights on, cut their telephone wires or hide their telephone handsets so they couldn't call for help. And he was all about controlling them, and that kind of method of waking them was about controlling them from the word go. He was straddling them on their bed, and of course he was considerably younger and much more powerful than them. They couldn't fight back in any way. Most of the offences weren't rapes. He raped on a handful of occasions, half a dozen occasions. Quite more than that, sort of 30 odd occasions, he indecently assaulted the victims. But of course, there was this DNA, and very much over the 17 years that the investigation had taken place, DNA was at the heart of everything the police were doing and the investigation team were trying to do. And it meant that they were trying to take swabs, samples from men in a suspect pool. Okay. And that suspect pool was really large because it was really black men in southeast London between the ages of 30 and 65. And not only is there quite a large number in that pool, but also, you know, I think it's self-evident. We all know that they had been growing up as young black men in London in the 1970s and 80s. And I think it's fair to say their experiences with the Metropolitan Police hadn't been entirely positive during that time, you know, and that's well documented. And we understand that, and hopefully things are getting better. But that meant that these officers, and don't forget, these are officers who have been proven detectives on a division, have applied and been selected to serve on the murder squad. You know, they want to be there. They're the best detectives of their generation. They should be. And rather than investigating murders, and rather than following trails to put away people like Levi Belfield or whatever, what they found themselves doing day in, day out was knocking on doors and saying, "Can I please swab you?" And they were getting, "Well, do I have to?" "Well, no, it's voluntary." "Well, I'm not going to then." "Well, why won't you?" "I don't trust you." "Why don't you trust us? What's it about?" "We want to eliminate you from a series of rapes." "I haven't done any rapes." "No, we know you haven't." "Well, if you know I haven't, then why do you want my DNA? What are you going to do with it?" You know, so it was a really difficult thing. And it really was. On the first week that I went there were 5,200 men in the priority pool. And they literally took one sample that week, despite spending all week doing it. And the maths was easy for me to work out. You know, 5,200, what a week, that's 100 years. And we haven't got that long. So it wasn't difficult for me to make that decision then, really, that things needed to change. And I'm not hypercritical of those that went before me, because I think when you're doing something and you're used to doing it and you've invested in a means of working and a track that you think is going to succeed, then it's often very difficult to turn around and pull out of it, isn't it? And that's perhaps why it needed somebody like me who hadn't had any involvement at all with the previous offences and the previous investigations to come in as an outsider and say, actually, what about doing something differently? But when you're inside, you sometimes can't see that. Do you understand what I mean? So, yeah. You know,
especially if they've gotten so far with the sampling, because you talked as well about like the tires, the Yorkshire Ripper. There was tire tracks, wasn't there? That, you know, and there's always the worry if you give up on this approach before you completed the sample, that you might actually miss something, and that means you're admitting wasting your time in the first part of it, whatever. But
I think that's right, and there was kind of a wrinkle in that in this case, because most police officers, all police officers, traffic officers, public order police, uniform police, detectives, everybody wanted this man to be locked up. You know, people across London were aware of what had gone on and how terrible the offences were. And because people wanted him to be locked up, people would come up with ideas. And so they'd kind of, you know, ring the incident room and say, "Oh, I was in this road the other day. I know it's a road where there've been 2 or 3 Nightstalker offences. And I noticed that Sky were putting cabling in for Sky Television. What if he works for Sky? He would be able to sort of do a reconnaissance of the houses and find his next victim like that." Because that was one of the things people were saying, was how does he select the houses? How does he do that in plain sight, if you like? And so someone says, yeah, that's a great idea. Okay, let's have all the actions back in. Let's see if we've got anybody in our pool who works for Sky, and we'll prioritise them. And then one of the victims at an offence said, well, when the man left my house, I heard a motorbike start and drive away. So it's, let's have all the actions back in again. Let's see if any of our men in the pool have got motorbike licenses, or we know that they ride motorbikes. And so what they were doing, it wasn't a kind of a structured approach of saying, yes, we'll start at number 1 and work our way through to number 5,200. It was, we'll start at number 1, we'll get up to number 27 or 28, and then we'll shuffle the pack and we'll start at number 1 again. And that was kind of the problem with it. I mean, I'm pretty skeptical about mass swabbing exercises as a means of solving crimes. I've said many times, DNA is a blessing and a curse. It's great for proving somebody was there if you know who that someone was. If you don't know who that someone was, it can be a bloody nightmare, and has proved to be so.
We talked about it as Palestinians.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're not young black men from Southeast London, but we are Palestinian, so we could totally see it from both sides of the coin. Like, you know, if there was these horrendous series of crimes, you'd want to help. But if the authority that was that you were obliged to like submit DNA or whatever to, if you really didn't trust them and had really horrendous experiences with them, would you want to give them your literal DNA profile? It would be.
No, I understand that completely. And you know, I'm not sure things are much better today, but they probably are somewhat better. But there's if you look at it from the senior investigating officer's point of view, every single time somebody refused, you had to assume that the real perpetrator would probably refuse when you asked him. So it kind of aroused a suspicion about that individual, and tough decisions had to make, and people got arrested who were nothing to do with it, you know, and it just muddied the waters. But yeah, I mean, it was certainly a very difficult investigation, as they always are. And I take the view that, you know, I'd never do a DNA mass screening exercise willingly as my sort of first choice to investigate anything. It's almost a tactic of last resort for me. So yeah, I mean, when I went over there, the very first meeting, you know, my famous red book that you see on the dramas and things like that, you know, that I hadn't got the red book I was using at that time, unfortunately. But I remember writing, making notes in the meeting. And I wrote in the margin of that, what if we didn't have DNA, and a question mark, because every single line of inquiry, everything they were talking about was all based upon the fact that we had this DNA profile. And it was kind of, you know, I won't say it was that thinking that solved it, because we got lucky. We tried a different approach and it worked, you know, but there might have been other ways.
I would say it was key in there, because what was it, Randa? Colin, I can ask you. What was it? 17 years that the case went on, and then you solved it in what, 17 days?
Well, yeah. Once we started doing the surveillance operation that I wanted to do, then it was 17 days, which is it's a nice soundbite, isn't it? 17 years versus 17 days, but it didn't have to be like that. To be honest, you know, it worked, but the whole fact of it was that once I took that approach and said to myself, okay, if we didn't have DNA, what would we be looking at here? Then I sort of said, well, we're looking at a burglar. How do we catch prolific burglars? And we kind of went down that road. And it's more simple when you're working just on a division and you've got, you know, maybe an estate or 2 or 3 roads where you've got a burglar working, because you can contain that area by surveillance quite easily with quite, you know, relatively few people. And because they'll keep on coming back and doing more burglaries, you'll catch them eventually doing one in front of you and they're arrested. And that's how it kind of worked. The difficulty we had here was that our area wasn't an estate or a couple of roads. It was a quarter of London. And that's too big an area to try and lock down with police officers and surveillance, you know. So that was why we had to be a bit more sort of cute and clever and sort of targeted in where we were doing it. But yeah, I mean, that was the big the big thing really was to forget about the DNA, and also this question of, you know, what is he? Because I think, as I said earlier, that you get 2 rapes with DNA left and that connects them, and all of a sudden you've got a series, and the serious crime detectives get involved. Yeah. Now, there's kind of a mindset in that we are the elite detectives, because they are, and we do elite things like using DNA and using clever tricks and forensic stuff to prove our cases. And so they were going down the road of going to universities and saying, yeah, can you do anything with this DNA profile we've got? Can you tell us what he looks like or where he might have come from and things like that? And universities, of course, are great, because they see pound signs flashing up in front of them, because they can know if they succeed in doing it once, then they can charge for it in future. So they don't throw you away and say, no, there's really, you know, that's not reliable, we can't do that. So they're kind of going down all these, as they describe them, cutting edge ideas to try and get information from the DNA profile we had. And to them, it seemed a little bit below their dignity almost to forget about DNA and try and do it like a burglary. I heard so many times officers say, we're not a burglary squad, we're not a fucking burglary squad, we're not going to just look at burglars. And so they were viewing the Nightstalker as a sex offender they needed to catch, rather than saying, we're looking at a burglar who occasionally commits sex crimes as well. And that was the kind of change of mindset and change of focus that I think was important for us.
Just touching on something that you mentioned about how he selected the houses. Do you know how he selected the houses?
Well, no, we don't, because he's never talked to us and never said he's guilty. So we don't know anything about it. And even Nathan Easton, who was my DI when I was on there, went just before he retired, he went to see Delroy in prison and said, look, you know, you're here now for a very long time. Do you want to tell us what it was all about? And he just said, fuck off. So Nathan said, oh, okay, I'll go, and left it. No, we don't know, but I mean, what we could surmise from it, he had a very particular sort of target premises. He only did houses or bungalows. He never did flats or masonettes. He never did social housing. They were always private houses. He preferred the sort of 30s built semis and bungalows. They were his favourite, almost all. And do you know, if you drive up and down the streets of sort of, say, Shirley, where he worked a lot and where he was arrested, and you look, but anywhere in the suburbs, you can see where old people live. They're the ones that don't have, they've still got their garden. They haven't flattened it to put cars on. They might have, you know, things like the handrails by the doors to a dead giveaway, but they've got the old original front door, the colours, the sort of plants in the garden. They've got real grass, not artificial. You know, just all these things you can tell. And so I think he was clever enough to do that. There's also sort of an interesting kind of social history to me, sort of aspect of it, is that his favourite method of entry was to peel the kind of beading away on the outside of plastic UPVC windows. And that was only used, that method of holding windows in was only used for a relatively short time in the 80s. And I know because my parents had lived in a house for a long time then, and my father retired from the police, and they got their windows replaced with his lump sum, and they had those sort of windows put in their old house in London. And that was kind of a common thread. He chose these houses that had these windows because he could open them easily. But also a number of times we'd speak to the victims and they'd say, oh yeah, we had those windows done in 1986 when my husband retired. You know, it was kind of, I don't know, just one of those weird sort of things that's what he liked doing. The other funny thing about his method of going in was that he was always really, really meticulously careful about not causing any more damage than he had to, it seemed. And so if there were things on the windowsill when he was climbing in, he'd kind of place those carefully to one side. And so,
how considerate of him.
Yeah, exactly. And we all said, when we finally catch him, we bet his house is absolutely immaculate. Well, we couldn't have been more wrong, could we? Because he lived in an absolute tip. But he was, yeah, he was a weird mixture of well, you know, just a really strange personality. I suppose that's self-evident because of what he did, but
Yeah.
I've never encountered somebody who was able to flip between one and the other so easily as he did.
Well, interestingly, Colin, that is one of my questions for you, because that's what we find most fascinating, is the double life that he led. The fact that, you know, some people described him as a pillar of the community, as a nice guy. And we remember that when we spoke to you last, you mentioned that he could even be charming and likable. So what explains that? Have they ever done a psych evaluation of him in prison? What explains it? Is he genuinely those two people, or it was one a cover for the other?
Yeah, I don't know, because I don't know of any psych evaluation that's been done on him. It wasn't done. You know, there was no issue raised before the trial that there was any psychological impairment to his ability to stand trial or plead. So it wasn't done as a matter of that. It may well have been done in prison, but obviously I don't know what's gone on there. I think genuinely he was able to flick a switch. And whether he did that consciously or subconsciously, I don't know. But this was the thing. I've drawn the distinction many times between Belfield and Grant. And Belfield, when we spoke to those who knew him and his associates and friends, they kind of said, yeah, well, we always knew he was a complete head case and a real wrong one. You know, it was just a matter of time before it happened. Whereas when we spoke to people that knew Delroy like that, it was, no, you must have the wrong man. Literally, no, you must have the wrong man. You can't be him. You know, he looks after his wife. His wife's got progressive MS and she's virtually tetraplegic, and he cares for her. He used to go out with her knocking on doors with the Jehovah's Witnesses. He's the mainstay of the cricket team, the dominoes team in the pub. You know, he's the guy who'll come around and help you if you have a problem with your burst water pipes or something like that. When we have
Randa must be having a childcare issue.
Yeah, I know. They say when he had barbecues in the cul-de-sac where he lived, he'd do the barbecue, he'd do the music, he'd DJ. He's just such a really genuinely nice bloke. And you know, there's this weird thing that I've written in the book and I've spoken about before, where the first conversation I had with him was discussion about the strength of the England cricket team going to South Africa, and you know, just he's right up there as in the most bizarre conversations I've ever had in my life. And it wasn't until really sometime afterwards, when I look back on it, that I realised that I was getting the good guy Delroy then. He managed to switch back into his charming, nice
public
self.
face, right?
Yeah,
public persona.
And a reasonable, nice sort of friendly conversation about cricket. And you know, you genuinely thought, yeah, I could sit down and have a pint with this bloke and talk about cricket. And talk, you know, he was a charming, decent sort of bloke. And then you kind of remember what he's done and why he's there and why you're there. And, you know, how does this happen? But I think that's, you know, the Delroy I was getting there was the Delroy that all these friends and people who knew him were getting, and why they were so amazed and thought we'd got the wrong man. But you know, the DNA doesn't lie, and it was him.
I remember you saying when we talked to you last time that he was scarier to you than Belfield, who, like you say, you might not have suspected him of, you know, being a serial killer, but he just came across as like bad news, not someone you wanted to hang out with if you were a decent human, just someone to avoid at all costs. Whereas Delroy, you could easily just accidentally have this guy in your life and not realize. Yeah,
absolutely right. You know, Belfield was so sort of physically imposing and looked like a thug, and the way he talked and was so arrogant and you know, all sorts of things. You wouldn't warm to him. But Delroy was just like, you know, 100 guys I've met playing cricket over the years. He was just like, you know, a regular guy with a, you know, a cheerful disposition. You know, he was quite cheerful and quite chatty. And then you remember that he's having this nice, cheerful, friendly, blokey conversation with you, and he's just had a giant Q-tip wiped across the inside of his cheek that's going to send him to prison for 30 years. You know, bizarre, isn't it? It's just strange.
It is bizarre. One of the facts of the case that we fixated on, because we were just like, what an asshole, was when, I mean, there's many reasons why we think he's an asshole, but this one also shocked us, that when he sort of tried to throw his son under the bus, which,
Yeah,
I
know it was
just
quite
another level of shittiness.
Yeah, it is really. I mean, it's probably just sort of emblematic of the relationship that he actually enjoys or doesn't enjoy with his son, and vice versa, I guess. But yeah, I mean, you want to go and have a look at my son because his DNA might be like mine. I mean, we know, that's not how it works, and we knew that was a non-starter from the very beginning. But I sent people around to get it, and so that we could head that off as defence when it came to court. And quite a difficult thing for them, really, to go around and tell this young man that, well, your father said we ought to take DNA from you because he thinks you've done all the rapes and things that we think he's done. And he was. It was quite sad, because he was a decent young chap in his 20s and was just like, well, my dad's always been a letdown to me, and nothing changes.
But
I mean that.
Sorry,
go on. No, I was just going to say that the whole thing was, that avenue cut off to him. Of course, Delroy then came out with the comedy defence of ever, as far as I'm concerned, in that his defence was that in the late 70s, when he was splitting up with his wife, his first wife, she was saving and storing bodily fluids of his. Then she got a friend of hers who worked in the pathology at Guy's Hospital to store them for her, freeze them for her. And then at some point in the 90s, she decided the time was right to come out and got somebody to spray his DNA all over old ladies and their clothing and their bodies, which, is quite bizarre in many ways, not least of which is the fact that DNA identification as a thing didn't exist until the mid-1980s at the earliest, but there she was. I
mean, it's a great movie plot.
Psyche, yeah, exactly. And the thing that actually worried me for quite some time was, when it went to trial, he was convicted on a 10-2 majority. And I kind of thought there were two members of that jury going, yeah, it could have happened, couldn't it? Might have gone like that. Yeah, and you think, oh God, why do we let these people sort of sit in judgment? And it was only relatively recently that I had some contact with one of the old detectives who was on the team, who told me that he'd bumped into somebody in a pub or something who said, I recognise you. You were a detective. You were on that Delroy Grant case because I was on the jury. And of course, we don't normally get to hear what jurors think and say, and rightly so. It's not somewhere you can go and look behind the door of the jury room. But he sort of said, oh yeah, okay, yeah, that's me. And he said, do you know, this is the juror, said, do you know there were two people on that jury who, on the very first day, the first meeting we had, said, I hate the police, I don't trust the police, they fit everybody up, I don't care what the evidence is, it's not guilty from me. And in some ways, I feel better about that than thinking that two people believed his defence. It's almost, do you know what I mean?
It's like stupid, but in a different way to what you might have originally thought. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
But aren't they meant to filter out those kind of attitudes from a juror? I mean, obviously they can lie.
Yeah, they can, and we don't do it. We don't do the same sort of thing as they do in the States and have these sort of contested jury selection in that same way. People who have got an obvious bias or who declare an obvious bias, then they'll be found. But no, it doesn't. It's not really. You can, one of my my professors when I was at university, he was actually technically a barrister, so he technically shouldn't have gone on a jury, but he got a jury summons, so he thought I'll go, and he went along for 3 days running with wearing a suit and carrying the Daily Telegraph, and got challenged off of all the juries. This is in the 70s. And then the fourth day he went along jeans, t-shirt, a Daily Mirror, and got straight on. Yeah,
that's hilarious.
That was kind of how it used to work. Defence would have to look at what people look like and make a decision. Say, no, I don't want him, take him away. They had a number of challenges. They could just do that, peremptory challenges without giving you a reason for it. But it's not quite like that now. But, yeah.
Oh,
Colin, I'm so sorry I had to exit for a minute. It was my kids
It's okay.
were calling. I'm so sorry because you were just answering my question, but I'm really sorry. I panic whenever the school
That's
calls.
right. You'll have to listen. You'll have to listen to the podcast then.
Yeah.
Colin, we've listened back on and repeat.
Yeah.
Oh, and also, I just wanted to say sorry. The reason Deanna keeps muting me is not to cock block me from flirting with you. It's because I'm in a noisy place.
Yeah, you're the David Lloyd Centre.
I am. This is my co-working space because it's near my
Ah,
kids'
right.
school.
I see.
But I don't often get to the gym. So I use it as an office.
She's like, I'm at the gym.
Yeah,
She says.
I benefit from the lunch and the co-working space. But yeah, I'm really sorry about the
No,
background
don't
noise.
worry at all. Don't worry. No
But yeah,
problem.
we were really interested to know about whether you had any insight into his relationship with his mother and whether there was any link between that and his choice of victims, whether that at all influenced.
Yeah, it's an interesting avenue actually, because he was born and his mother left. Dad wasn't around anyway. Dad had come to the UK quite early on, and it wasn't until Delroy was in his teens, I think 14 or 15, that he came to the UK and met up again with his dad. But his mother left him and went to the USA. And certainly at the time we arrested him, she was still alive and still in the USA. And so he was brought up by his grandmother in Jamaica. And that's, again, not an uncommon sort of way of things happening. It happens quite frequently, or happened quite frequently at that time over there. So I don't think he had much of a relationship with his mother at all, because she left him when he was quite young. And though there may have been contact over the years, he didn't, certainly in his formative years, didn't live with his mother. But where it is interesting is that one of the victims, while he's having these sort of, interminable conversations with her, she said to him, "What would your mother think if she could see you now? What would your mum think of what you're doing?" And he replied something along the lines of, "My mother's dead. She was let down by the government." And so that was reported obviously back into the investigation, and they got quite excited about this, because they thought, well, okay, we know he's a black West Indian man. We don't know where from, but there'll only be a limited number of West Indian women of a suitable age to be his mother who can have died recently or at that time. And we can do some work in the line of inquiry along that and have a look and see if how was the government to blame? We might be able to, so there was a line of inquiry there, obviously. But of course, he didn't mean his mum, he meant his grandmother. And it happened in Jamaica. So it was never going to be a fruitful line of inquiry.
Oh,
but
that's interesting, because we touched on that and we cited that. But it's interesting that you clarified that it's his grandmother in Jamaica, not his mother here, which is what our belief was.
Yeah, I say that's the only explanation there can be for it, because he didn't have this relationship with his mother. But then, of course, people who know about psychology much more than I do sort of say, aha, he was brought up by his grandmother. That's why he's got this preoccupation with elderly women and why he's a gerontophile. Now, yeah, there might be something in that, but as far as I'm aware, there's quite a lot of people who are brought up by their grandparents who don't grow up as gerontophiles and with designs and old ladies. So, has it contributed to it? I guess it could have done, but again, it's above my pay grade really to start going into those things.
Do you think it was, because you also said that there were male victims as well, that it was less about the actual victim profile and just more about like the logistics of finding someone who's vulnerable enough for him to be able to physically control and emotionally, mentally control?
Yeah. It's interesting. I don't know. I mean, it's possible. It's absolutely possible that because he did his reconnaissance by looking at the sort of state of the house and what the house looked like, he wouldn't know whether or not the person who lived there was male or female until he broke in. I mean, that's possible. And of course, sort of the way demographics go is women live longer than men, and so there are more widows than there are widowers. So you're perhaps more likely in houses like that to come across a woman. I don't know, but there's one of the male victims he went to twice. which was interesting in a number of ways. One is that the second time he managed to hit the jackpot in terms of money, he found this guy's savings and took about £3,000. But the first offence hadn't been recorded from Minstead; it had been reported to them, and it was the time they didn't have enough staff to deal, and they'd sort of go through and they'd find a reason not to investigate it and give it back to the borough. But then when you've got the victim saying, "Oh yeah, I saw him, it's the same man," and he said, "I said to him, oh, you're back again, are you?" And he's left evidence there that proves that it's the same by DNA. It's the same offender. Of course, that was more power to my proposition that we'd been throwing cases back to division that we shouldn't have done because they were all him. So that's why I say that the final reckoning came up to 204 offences. That's a sort of official number. I think it's probably double that.
I was going to say, like, is there any way of estimating how many victims? Because especially the sexual assault of that generation, it must be incredibly difficult to come forward and report. And
there's no doubt. It's not. They're not of a generation that are used to talking about intimate things, and they would rather internalise it and not tell anybody, a stranger, no matter how many kind of nice, brilliantly trained, sympathetic family liaison officers we had, which we did, and no matter what we said we would do, and however you sort of dress it up, this is one of my big bugbears about sexual assaults on women and how they're investigated and the low conviction rate, low prosecution rate. There is no way of getting around this. You have just been subjected to the worst, most terrifying, most intrusive episode in your entire life. And within hours, we, the police, say, okay, now we need to take you through it all over again and have another intrusive examination and there is no way around it. And because you cannot possibly begin a prosecution unless you get that sort of evidence. But the only way to get that sort of evidence, and you can have nice wallpaper and chintzy curtains and carpets and cushions and cups of tea, but it doesn't take away from the fact that has to happen. And there's no way of getting around that. You can't do anything about that. All you can do is try to mitigate the effects of it, but it's still going to be there. I mean, that was interesting. That was one of the if you in the drama or in the book, there was this woman that I called Ellen who was the one who grabbed my hand and said, "Colin, he interfered with me," and just the most heartbreaking time. I had a decision to make then as to whether or not we sent her for the sexual examination because she wasn't saying what had gone on, and in normal circumstances, a victim who's been assaulted and said that will be taken for that. And she's 94 years old; she can barely see, and was very, very frail. And I just didn't think it was. I didn't see the point in putting her through that. I just didn't see the point. It wasn't gonna do anything in terms of what sentence the man got at the end when we finally caught him. It wasn't going to, the only thing it was going to do was to subject her to another couple of hours of ordeal. And I thought she'd suffered enough. And so I made the call and said, no, we're not going to do that. We'll just go with what we've got and leave her. And of course, she died within 6 weeks anyway, because she stopped eating.
Colin,
in some ways,
these are the reasons why we love you so much, because of your humanity and your compassion and everything.
Well, I mean, what I would say is the fact that she stopped eating and died 6 weeks later, at least we haven't got on our conscience as the police that we contributed to her being sort of traumatized at that time.
Yeah. Because you said, obviously, it's a generation that is less inclined to talk about intimate things. We're getting better about that now. I think it's important that people do have the ability to talk about this sort of stuff in relationships and when something horrendous happens. But it's also a generation that very much still thought that if you were sexually assaulted, that you were to blame for that, you had asked for it, or there was shame for the victim, which luckily we're moving very far away from that now. So Yeah, it's
Well,
just
we are. There are still certain members of the judiciary and the legal profession, and even and Parliament as well, that seem to rear that up every now and then, which it's just shameful on them. But yeah, they're few and far between now, but they do still exist, sadly, don't they?
yeah. Well, Rhonda has a question for you.
So
And
there were large gaps, allegedly, of large gaps of inactivity for Grant. Does that mean there were unreported cases, or is there an explanation why somebody like him would have had dormant periods?
yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, when you're looking at something like this, the sort of classic detective reaction is to say, "Oh, is he in prison? Has he gone abroad? Has he died? If they don't start again." And I don't think any of those. He certainly wasn't in prison. We know that, and he didn't die. Did he go abroad? We're not aware that he did go abroad. The trouble is that it was only from June 2009 that we recorded every single possible offence. I wanted to do that because I wanted our analysis, our crime pattern analysis that I was going to ask for, to be done on as much information as possible. And before that time, there were all these offences which weren't being investigated by the Minstead team. They were, so typically what would happen is there would be an overnight burglary reported at a police station of an elderly woman lives alone, and as a man came in, she saw him, he was dressed in black, and therefore it must be a Minstead offence. And they tell Minstead about it and say, "Oh, did he take the light bulbs out? No. Did he cut the phone wires? No, it can't be our man then. Off you go, back to you." So they were kind of like a long list of 25 or 30 features that were common in Minstead offences. And unless you got, I don't know, 18, 19, 20 of those, then they would push it back to the division. And so is it possible that he was still busy during those times, but we just didn't actually record them as Minstead offences? Yeah, it's possible. One of those periods was kind of before computerised crime recording came into the Met. So you'd need to go to some warehouse in Nottingham or somewhere where all the paper records are stored, if they're still there, and go through them manually to try and find this out. And of course, there's no reason to do that, so it wasn't done. There's no doubt that when he had the near miss where he nearly got arrested, and the offence in Lambeth on the second night of the surveillance we were doing, that spooked him, and he didn't do anything for the next 2 weeks. So we don't know. Did he think he came close to being caught at some point when those gaps came in? Did he have new relationships and he felt that he didn't need to do it? That's another thing, because he had a number of kind of relationships, consensual relationships with women alongside his marriage, and it's possible that they coincided with these things. So the answer is we don't know.
It might have been a period of just people not reporting the crimes.
Yeah,
maybe.
It could have been. It could have been. What I did try to do was kind of extrapolate the rate of offending we saw over the sort of 2 years that I looked at, and extrapolate that back over the whole period. And that's how I come up with the idea that there's a possibility there were 400 or 500 offences rather than 200. But yeah.
Oh, that's just heartbreaking.
And I still get to this day people contact me and saying, "I think my mother or my grandmother was a victim of the Nightstalker." These are the details.
I this is a strange aside, but I go to counselling every week. Probably unsurprising, but everyone should. And my counsellor told me that her mother was one of the actresses in the Martin Clunes dramatization.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and because I talk about you in counselling a lot, Colin.
Oh, right.
My love for you, how to overcome this infatuation, etc., etc. Yeah, so it came up that her mum was one of the, I don't remember which lady, but one of the victims in the dramatization. And I thought,
oh, really?
fucking hell, it must be hard enough to watch your mum acting out being a victim of one of these crimes, knowing it's entirely fictional. Well, in your mum's case, I just can't imagine if you suspect that one of your family members. Oh, just awful.
No, it's right. It's right. It's difficult.
But on that note, how did you and the officers and support staff and whatever on your team, how do you deal with such a incredibly emotionally taxing case then at the time and then afterwards?
Yeah, I mean, the only I can count the number of times I was really emotionally troubled whilst I was serving as a police officer. Probably on certainly the things are two hands, but possibly one. And one of them was that lady in on this case. But I'm a bit sort of thick-skinned like that. I think probably I learned at an early age in the police that bloody awful shit happens, and I've chosen that I'm going to be the person that tries to make some sense of the bloody awful shit and deal with it and help others get through it. So I kind of always managed to separate home life and work life. And occasionally, as I say, something would happen that really drags at you. Now, I think I'm possibly unusually thick-skinned or unusually kind of philosophical about all these things that go on. Many others aren't. And at the time, I think it kind of inspires you to redouble your efforts and to make sure that you succeed in what's going on, because the big difference in doing the Nightstalker case to most of the cases that I did on that command were that I actually had live victims. In the other cases you'd have immediate family, but actually speaking to live victims was quite a novel thing for me. So I hadn't done it for about 8 years, and in what I've been doing. And I think that kind of helps inspire you to that there's somebody there to do something for, not just the family, but actually the person who's suffered directly. But the police service as a whole are only really within the last few years coming to terms with the fact that they need to look after their staff in this respect. It didn't happen. If you go back to the story in my Belfield book, when I was 22 years old and I come across a fire in which 2 people died, and I'm a little bit upset because I think I should have tried harder, and I'd have probably killed myself if I had, burnt to death myself in there. But I'd gone into the building and decided I couldn't get any further and ran out again, and felt bad about it. And the way of dealing with that at the time was, I'll come and work on a murder squad, you can earn a few bob in overtime. That was kind of that was how you deal with any kind of feelings I might have. It's not like that now. There are various, I do work and do stuff for a couple of charities that look after police officers, their mental health, and also police officers' families. But yeah, I mean, it's everyone's different, aren't they? And the culture was such at the time, even still in 2010, 2009, 2010, the culture was still that nobody came into me and said, "Governor, I feel a bit rough. I feel a bit bad about this. This has really shocked me." Nobody said that.
Steve Gaskin, our mutual friend,
yes,
told us a really funny, well, it's not funny, but it's quite funny, but it's also very sad, story about, I can't remember which case it was. I think it might have been the London bombings, where they just walked into a room of police officers and said, hands up.
That was Stephen Keogh.
Oh, sorry, Stephen Keogh. So he said they just walked into the room full of the police officers and said, hands up if you want any help with your mental health. And obviously none of them were going to openly admit that in that kind of scenario. So it's a real thing. I remember I was on a residential course at Hendon, because the Met still owned places like that then, in 1986, early-ish in 1986, and the nursing home or nursing facility or health facility there was full of people who'd been at the Broadwater Farm at the riot and were suffering from PTSD and what they'd seen. And it was like a scene from MASH, if you remember MASH. It was something like that. It was like
just these sort of zombies wandering around.
Oh,
And
horrendous.
you know, that's yeah, we were completely useless at dealing with it, and we're a lot better at it now.
Colin, have there been any policies or procedures that have changed in law enforcement as a result of the Delroy Grant case?
Is it just get Colin Sutton on the case as soon as possible?
I don't believe so. I'll tell you something about this. This is you know, when the Delroy Grant case went to trial, he gets convicted, he gets sentenced to 28 years in prison or whatever it was. We had a very senior Met officer standing outside the court, wringing his hands, saying, "We're really sorry, we didn't do well at this. We're really, really sorry," you know, and all this organisational contrition, as they call it. And they decided that they ought to have a learning exercise, if you like, where people contribute what they can and sort of, you know, seminars and go away. We did it after Belfield. You know, we all went down to some place in Oxfordshire, some sort of management place for 3 days or something, and did the debrief. They did the same on Minstead. I wasn't invited.
Why not?
I've no idea.
I don't like that at all, Colin. First of all, you're super fun at a conference, and secondly, you're literally the one that cracked the case.
But the thing is that it really smelled, you know, kind of smacked to me of people marking their own homework.
Yes, we've investigated ourselves, and we've decided we're awesome.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I never, and it was going to happen, and I was retiring, and I think there was sort of a, "Oh, well, you'll be retired by the time." I said, "Well, that's okay. I don't mind coming along. It's worth it. You know, it's worth it. We take the lessons out of here." And I can't say too much, and I won't say too much. But there are some lessons from there that I'm pretty sure haven't been learned, and we've seen repeats of it.
That's horrendous.
The only thing that I think might have changed is that I think there's an understanding and realization that elder abuse and the status of the elderly as victims needs to have a higher profile. Yeah. You know, we said at the time, if these victims have been between 18 and 18 and 34 rather than 68 and 94, this case would have been all over the papers from the very beginning, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But you've got the combination of a sort of a silent, hidden sort of demographic, and also one that's very bad at being its own advocate.
And you know? We talk a lot about on the podcast the victim profile and how that affects media coverage, and it's just so sad, isn't it? Like, you know, it's a pretty little blonde girl. She deserves to have that press, you know. She definitely deserves it, but then
so does everyone.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you think that Delroy Grant will ever get out of prison?
No.
I haven't done the maths in terms of his age and whatnot.
81, 82, I think it'll be. No, I don't think he will, because, you know, don't forget that these recommendations are periods where there's not a whole life tariff. He has to serve that long before he is eligible to apply for parole. Doesn't mean to say he's going to get out. Okay. And there's no doubt that had his offences not been timed when they were, so prior to whole life tariffs being a thing, then he would have got a whole life tariff for this. But he couldn't. So the next best thing, you know, is, would you want to be the Home Secretary who released him? Would you want to be the parole board?
Well, what we've noticed from researching this is that they seem to be fine with it, some of them. Because every time I get an alert that one of the people that we've covered or someone that we're following or whatever is up for parole, I feel sick and nauseous, because you never know, do you?
I can understand that. I'll tell you, here's a little, I haven't done much plugging yet, so I'll do a little plug.
Good, because that was going to be the next question. What are you up to these days?
Right, but the third series of The Real Manhunter is going to begin on Sky Crime any second. It should be this month, or if not in October. I'll put it on my socials when I know the date.
Oh my God, and we will share it.
one of the programs we do in that is I talk to a mother of a murdered child, whose body's never been found, and whose murderer is now eligible to apply for parole. And every year in about March, the parole board write her a letter and say, we just let you know if you want to say anything about him being at a parole hearing, and we'll let you know the outcome of it in 6 to 8 weeks' time.
So she now through that every year.
She now has an annual on pins 6 to 8 weeks where she's worrying as to whether or not, and you just think, why do we treat people like this? The police by and large have got family liaison right now. The CPS even sort of understand it a bit now. They never used to. Can the parole board not understand who they're working for? Because
we did the Colin Pitchfork case halfway off a recommendation from a book recommendation that you did at a talk, The Blooding, about a mass super fascinating case, obviously, because it was the first time DNA was used to clear someone as well as to convict someone. But he, I was shocked when he was released. Not shocked that it lasted 5 minutes before he reoffended or broke his parole. I don't think anyone was really that shocked. And then they're talking about, him applying for parole again. It's just bonkers. It just seems like a lot of waste of money and time and anguish for the family and the victims, and crazy. But tell us more about so you've got season 2.
Season 3 coming out. Season 3. It's 9 weeks. It starts with a long 90-minute episode, and then I think there were 8 hour episodes after that. That's coming out. I haven't got any more filming actually planned for the rest of this year, I don't think yet, but there might be some. But I've started doing these sort of live gig things, which have been a complete. I didn't really want to get into. You might know my good friend and great guy David Swindle. He does like 3 a week, 4 a week. I couldn't cope with all that.
I get tired reading his list of gigs.
Yeah, exactly that. And of course, I didn't realise until I started doing it that most, and it makes absolute sense, but most theatres, if you booked up to do a gig at a theatre, then when you sign the contract, you promise not to do one within 25 miles or 30 miles, 3 months either side of it or something. So you can't actually think, okay, well, this makes sense. I'll do, I'll do Southampton, Bournemouth, Christchurch, Poole, Wimbledon sort of thing. You can't do that. You have to go all over. No, but anyway, I did one last year at a theatre in York, and it went really well. And then somebody asked me to do one in Suffolk, in Beccles, which was incredibly good, and not somewhere that you'd think would be the social centre and the true crime centre of the universe. But they had to put extra seats in, they sold out, and it went really well. So, and I enjoyed it, and I enjoy it because it gives me, I come and meet and do selfies and sign books and things afterwards. I don't sell anything. I think it's really grubby taking it on DVDs or books or something. I don't do that, or merch. But I'd always meet people and talk to them. So I'm doing something. I've booked up for about, I think 10 or 11 now, going through in the next 12 months. So I've made 1 or maybe 2 a month, I think will be my maximum. But
Colin, do you want to send me the list of the dates, and I'll make you a nice little Canva tile for your social media?
Yeah,
or
okay.
I'll make my sister do do
I will do. Yeah, I will do.
Right,
yeah,
cool.
I mean, they're coming literally. It's. I was amazed. I'll send out a few emails to sort of reasonably sized theatres and see how much interest there might be in. Yeah, there's loads. So that'd be fun. But I'm not.
Are any of them in Twickenham?
Not yet. There's one in Surrey, not a million miles away for you soon. But I want to do one somewhere in southwest London. Joe Brunt suggested somewhere, and I've spoken to them, but they've not got back to me yet.
Twickenham Exchange is a lovely theatre, and it's right across the road from the station, so it's super easy if you're not from Twickenham.
Yeah.
But it's also walking distance from my house.
How big it is?
I don't, but I'll send you all the details.
I'll have a look. Twickenham Exchange. I'll have a look. That's what I'm doing. People are recommending things to me, and so I'll go and have a look at that and see send them an email and see if they fancy it. But yeah,
Colin,
that's
we were, I'm volunteering my sister's services here, but she's a social media manager and I have a background in events planning. So if there's ever anything that we can do to help out, then
On the house, on the house, Colin, for you.
No.
obviously.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. No, for
Colin,
sure.
that's the deal. On the house and
That's
nothing
the
at all.
deal.
All right,
Yeah.
okay.
Otherwise, we just won't do it. So, but
Okay.
yeah, honestly, we would love to be able to help you with any of your work because it probably mean hanging out with you a bit more. So we'll do it. Oh, well,
Yeah.
Gladly
Okay.
gladly and with bells on, Colin. And yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely an honor to help you out with that.
So,
Okay. Thank you.
speaking
I'll
of,
probably take you up on that because it's getting a bit unmanageable.
oh, well then do let us
Yeah.
know. Honestly, we're
Is it all of
super-
our messages that are becoming all
No, not at all. No, it's just I've even bought myself a paper diary, like one of these academic diaries that goes from September to September.
Yeah.
Because it kind of, that's the time frame I'm looking at. I think the last one I want to do is 4th of September next year, is in Blackburn in Lancashire. They're starting on the 16th of November in Wimborne. And yeah, in Dorset and all places in between that I can get to. But
send them through to us and we'll make nice little images for your social so you can
I'll
share
do
them
that this afternoon.
easily. And yeah, we would
Colin
very
Sutton
happily
Reels.
have.
Send us
Yeah.
some footage of you, Colin, just for
Yeah.
our own amusement, but also to create reels for your social media.
Okay.
I do want to do one of those grubby merch plugs, but I'm hoping it's not that grubby because it's for victim support. But we still have in our shop our Colin Sutton fan merch, which includes Colin Sutton fan club mugs, and we have a t-shirt and all sorts. So all the profits from those Colin Sutton items do go to victim support, which is a charity that Colin Sutton picked at the time. So I mean, it does what it says on the tin. It
That's
helps
not
victims and the
not-
family of victims.
That's not grubby merch at all, but I don't really like, yeah.
Oh,
So
do you know
you
what
think-
I don't like? Where people won't sign your book unless you've bought them specifically on the day.
Oh, really?
Yeah, people do that. So, once I worked at the Science Museum and I was really upset because I was working on the James Bond exhibition, and Randa will tell you as well that my dad loves James Bond and we grew up watching James Bond. And
Yeah.
so I was really happy to be working on this exhibition, had loads of the cool cars and everything. And then one day, I think he's dead, but I'll say it anyways, but Jaws, I can't remember his name, but
Yes.
Jaws. He
Yeah.
came along and I got to show him around the exhibition, but he was like he literally was his character, but
Yeah.
probably less murdery. So he was really grumpy, not very chatty. And I was like 19, like, I love you. Kind of like how I am with you. And then he did a book signing, but he wouldn't sign anything that people hadn't bought specifically on that day, including this little 9-year-old boy whose birthday it was. And he brought a calendar. It's like, clearly they've
that's
bought your
awful.
stuff previously.
No, that's
like,
not.
yeah, it's not very nice, is it?
I'll even sign an air freshener.
You'll even sign body parts from. Oh God,
Do you know
that
about
sounds
the?
awful.
Do you know about the air freshener? You must have put this out. You must edit this.
You told us, didn't they? There's
But-
Colin Sutton. Yeah. I hope that if you're selling the air freshener, hope
I'm
you're
not.
No.
not.
Whoever, if the person listening,
Oh
because
right.
they obviously love Colin Sutton, so they might be consuming this. Then make a donation to victim support as well, because Colin would appreciate it, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
Air freshener
absolutely.
sales.
Absolutely, I would. I just wish. Oh, there we are. Did you ever see it?
No, otherwise we have it. Oh, look at that, you handsome devil.
Oh.
I love that.
Amazing.
Is it
Amazing.
scented? Oh, it is, because it's an air freshener.
What
Yeah.
does it say? The real, yeah. We will keep you up to date with how much we make and donate to the victim support. We're going to make the donation towards the end of the year in one lump sum, and then ongoing if people want to still buy the merch. So we'll keep everyone posted on that. But do check out their work because they're absolutely amazing. I wasn't that familiar with them before you suggested them, to be honest. I'd heard of them and have been doing a lot of research into what they're doing and think they're fantastic. So, yeah. Well, Colin, do you have any questions for us?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. The sun's out.
Colin, I'm single now.
Are you?
And Colin, I am looking for D.
How's that?
When we talk, when it's a good thing, don't worry. She's
It's good.
absolutely
It's good. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine.
It's
I've
a good
already
thing.
got. I've got Steve Gaskin, who, for those of you who don't know, is like expert criminal profiler and expert on psychopaths, who's volunteered to go on all first dates with me. And I was like, I can't have that, because imagine being like a third date on your own, like a third wheel at your own date, because everyone's just sitting there fascinated with the criminal
Colin, do you know
profiler you
what?
brought.
When Deanna announced her newfound singledom on the podcast, I said that what I'm now looking for D, because this is now in my, well, you know, hopefully I'll have a bit more of an input in it this time. That what we're looking for is, I specifically cited a Colin Sutton, a Steve Gaskin, or a Stephen Keogh. That is what I'm looking for D, or a Tony Benn. I'm looking for this type of a nice, good guy.
Tony Benn, did you say?
Ben. Yeah, Deanna's good friend. He's not with us anymore, is he, D? Tony Benn?
No.
Okay. But yeah, Deanna's good friends with Tony.
Have you got Tony Benn there for me?
Yeah, I'm trying to find him.
Yeah,
Or Randa, Jeremy Corbyn.
Jeremy Corbyn?
No, not Jeremy. No, I don't like him.
Oh,
well, see, I'm obsessed.
he's a good friend. He's a good friend of our dad's.
I see.
Yeah.
I worked at he was the local MP where I worked for many years. No, I've got Tony Benn's diaries here somewhere.
Yeah, this is the kind of man that I'm looking for D.
Yeah.
A nice good socialist.
So, you know, just
Yeah, I'm not sure about that.
it can't be any more right than socialist, like right leaning than socialist, or they won't want to be going out with me anyway.
No.
So
But
sorry.
we're looking for a nice guy. If they had a job that, you know, that would be.
If they had a job, that would be great.
So socialist with a socialist with a job, I think you might be.
What criteria have we?
What
What criteria have you added to the list recently?
You know, Colin, before, like, I always wanted for D a doctor, a pilot. You know, now I want a detective for D. But unfortunately,
Oh, really?
yeah, a good, you know, crime fighter. It's just, to be honest with you, Colin, I just want a nice guy for D. That is all I want. If they have a job, even better.
So, Colin, you've got time, because I need some time on my own to find myself, blah, blah, blah. But
Yeah.
when the time comes, I'm going to need your assistance, okay? I'm going to need criminal background checks and all sorts.
Yeah,
on
of
these
course.
people,
Yeah.
because
Yeah, vetting.
I am not good at that.
She's not. She has no red flag radar. No red
No,
flag
no,
radar.
I see the red flags, but then I'm like, oh, but it's because his mother did this, and oh, I can't judge them on that because, you know.
This is why the decision needs
I'm
to be
that
taken
one.
away. The decision needs to be taken out of these hands.
Yeah, I want like basically an arranged marriage, but where I select the selection committee, and you two would be on it.
Right. Okay. Yeah, we could do that, couldn't we?
Yeah,
Colin.
'cause, you
Yeah,
know,
Randa, we
there's
could do that.
Oh, me and you.
We could do.
Offer I've had my whole life. Oh, I'm so flattered. You will collaborate with
You
me.
can be bad cop and I'll be good cop.
Yeah,
Or the other way
well,
around.
I mean,
Yeah.
Deanna's partners have always been afraid of me, but
Yeah.
Do you know, just the fact that a man has been selected by D. Colin Sutton would probably increase our chances of survival as a couple.
No, I doubt it.
Infinitely. No, because I would just be like, that's the man that Colin chose for me.
I'm not very good at choosing. Yeah, no, I don't have a great track record with these things, I have to say.
Yeah, well.
Third
All
time
right.
lucky though, Colin. Third time lucky. Huh?
Yeah, third. Yeah,
But the third time lucky.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But Colin, we
Well-
adore you so much. And you honestly, you are decency personified.
Oh, I try.
Yeah.
I try.
And you're fucking hilarious with it as well. And yeah, so we just love funny people, and you are hilarious. Oh, before Colin goes, I do just want to ask him the question. So we struggled all season 1 to find out how to end our episodes, because it feels like we tell everyone like a horrible story and then we're like, bye, sleep well, you know. So we were trying to think of like a slightly lighthearted way to end. And we've come up with the People's Pulse. This is where I'll cue in the music. The People's Pulse, the People's Pulse, where we ask a question of our listeners on social media, random questions,
To
and we'll
lighten the
share
mood.
to lighten the mood a bit. And so the episode that where we covered Delroy Grant, the question was ideal first date. So I want to
Colin,
ask that question of you.
Can I just say, Colin, that I said that if I were to go on a first date with you, that I would have picked crazy golf.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. Oh, I see. So not a person, just the idea.
No. The
I
actual
know
activity.
we just took it a step further and started talking about what we would do if we went on a date with you.
I tell you, on my first date with my wife, we went to a restaurant that had a mezzanine, and we were sitting up above everyone else, and I managed to knock the salt, pepper, vinegar, and everything through the railings and dive bomb the table below us. So that's not an ideal first date. I'd say don't go to a restaurant that's got split levels in it.
If you're clumsy, yeah.
If you're clumsy as I am, yeah.
Did she laugh?
Yeah.
And did you style it out?
Still talks about it. No, I just, it's it's.
Were you like, they look like they needed seasoning? I did it on purpose.
No, I think it's more with me. It'd be more questions saying what not to do. So it's don't go anywhere where there's any being clumsy can cause any problems for anybody else. Don't go anywhere that's slippery or hilly because I'll fall over. So I don't know. I think probably ideal first date probably for me would be to go to watch Tottenham Hotspur. Because if they came with me and enjoyed it, then I'd know I didn't have to work quite so hard. No, I don't know.
Then you keep them.
That's a keeper. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cute.
Oh,
all right,
you,
well,
Colin.
we're gonna let you go, Colin, back to
Thank
your
you.
crime fighting activities, and Randa has to go and do the school run. But we are honestly so honored every time you talk to us.
No, don't worry.
So,
Colin, can we ask you a question?
Mm-hmm.
Do you like us?
Of course I do. Wouldn't come on, would I? Otherwise.
I just needed to have that recorded so we could listen to it over.
I'm gonna make that into a little sound bite. We'll pretend it's for our reels, but it will be just how we start every day.
Colin, we're gonna literally loop that, and that's gonna be our morning affirmation. That's gonna put us in the right frame of mind every day.
Colin, it might go without saying, but we like you too.
Oh, good, yeah. Thank you. I gathered that.
Colin, you know how much we love you, like Kathy Bates in Misery.
You know the documentary Misery?
Yeah.
The instructional video Misery?
Yeah.
That's how we love you.
Right.
See you in a few days, Colin.
See you on Friday. Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
All right then.
Oh, are you getting there on Friday?
Yeah, Friday. I think Friday afternoon. I think. I don't know.
We'll see you in the bar.
Yeah, almost certainly. Yeah.
All right.
See you later.
Thank you so much, Colin.
Cheers.
Bye. Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Hey there! Thanks for being a loyal listener.
Do you need a new website or want to boost your social media performance? Or do you hate podcast editing? You've tried optimizing your website and social media channels, but you're still not getting the listeners, downloads, and engagement you want?
We, the Safie sisters, love helping people with tasks that they hate. We know a thing or two about podcasts, websites, and social media, and we love working with other podcasters and business owners.
So why not head over to switchbladesisterssocialclub.com and go to our Work With Us section. We believe in collaboration over competition. A rising tide raises all ships.
Bye!